back to Comic Trades Monthly, the show where we talk about a volume of comics in a book club format, where we talk about the characters, the story arcs, the meaning behind it all. I am one of your hosts. My name is David, and with me as always, Dane.
How's it going?
Good. How about you?
Oh, just going.
I know that feeling. And our guest this month is my wife, Kaylin.
Aw, I get a name.
You do get a name. Last month you did not get a name at all, did you?
I got no name.
It was just my wife this, my wife that, my wife this. So tell us about your comic book history, Kaylin.
My comic history is rather limited. I believe about 6 years ago, you gave me a box and said, read these, and I mostly read old school versions of The Flash.
Yep.
Shocker. David making people read The Flash.
Let's see.
It wasn't even good Flash. It was just Flash. Some of them I regret making you read those. There's so many other good ones I could have made you no, but I had to make you read the racist ones.
Yeah. Well, you also had me read Locke and Key, which I'm grateful for. Yeah. I really love Sunstone. That's probably my favorite at
that
this
one
moment.
You discovered yourself.
I did. But I generally read full novels, anthologies, science fiction, fantasy.
Brandon Sanderson. That's what you read.
And Sanderson.
Brandon Sanderson. All right. So this month we are talking about Locke and Key, written by Joe Hill, which is Stephen King's son. And Kaylin and I talked about this of how shitty must it be that you the only thing that you might be known as is Stephen King's son.
And I was thinking about that too. I mean, it's such a name to live up to as well. I mean, you're living in the shadow of your father, who's been writing horror novels since way before any of us were glimmers in our parents' eye. Yeah.
And I was also thinking about Anne Rice's kid, who writes short stories and poems and things like that. And there's just that oh my gosh, both my parents are fantastic writers and I have this legacy to live up to. And I haven't read much of his work, but from what I've understood, it's okay. It's not the greatest.
I've read nothing. I didn't care enough.
You didn't care enough.
And I love Anne Rice. So.
You do.
That would be like being Isaac Asimov's son and working in a construction field.
Or Frank Herbert's son.
Yes.
The guy who wrote the Dune series.
I know who Frank Herbert is. What do you take me for?
I know you know, but I'm letting the audience know because not everybody knows.
That just looked very pointed.
But thinking about this world that your father creates, and then you're well, I gotta continue that shit up. Oh gosh.
It's like Tolkien's son picking up the Middle Earth series after he'd passed away. It's Tolkien was great at story building, and you are okay at building on what your dad started.
Yeah.
Only okay, not great.
Yeah, that's fair.
Tolkien rant. I can put that aside.
All right. So Joe Hill, he has also written many different things. He's written the short story Horns, which was the Daniel Radcliffe movie adaptation. Or he wrote the short story, which was adapted in the movie with Daniel Radcliffe. He wrote Strange Weather, The Cape, which is another comic, and a plethora of short stories. So many short stories. It would take our full time just to name them all and talk about every one of them.
And, I actually enjoyed Horns. I thought it was a really interesting movie. Haven't read the short story. And did you ever watch the TV series The Cape that was based on the Joe Hill story?
I did not, no.
That one was interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, you have this character who becomes a superhero because it was his son's favorite hero. Mm-hmm. Gets framed for murder. He himself is a police officer, so he goes into hiding and joins a circus.
Huh.
And the ringmaster of the circus is Keith David.
Weird.
It's weird, but it's awesome because one of the main bad guys is Vinnie Jones. Uh-huh. He plays this guy named Snakeskin. Uh-huh. And his skin's all scaly, and he's filed his teeth down, and almost like Killer Croc, but more believable.
Okay. That's cool.
It was an interesting series, but it only lasted for one season. It was one of those short-lived 2010s TV series, which there were so many that I loved, and I really hate
that they ended so quickly.
Yes.
Middleman is one of those that Kaylin. It was Middleman or Dirty or Big Little Lies. Was that the show that? Because I remember there was the network ABC Family was like down to like either we renew Middleman or we renew, I think it's Big Little Lies.
So I was thinking Pretty Little Liars.
Pretty Little Liars, that what
might
it
have
is.
been it.
Yeah. But Pretty Little Liars, and they were like, well, it's one of the two, and everybody likes a drama, so...
Everybody likes pretty girls who are being implicated in murder and being blackmailed, so why not?
Bitches, man.
Right.
Bitches. Okay, so written by Joe Hill, drawn by Gabriel Rodriguez, and I'm noticing this trend that it's kind of harder to find what these artists have worked on over time. Gabriel Rodriguez has worked kind of often with Joe Hill in a couple different series. But he also did art for the Edward Scissorhands comic book, which I find is a very unique style that you have to match to if you're going to go with that Tim Burton-esque life drawings, right? And he also did the Star Trek Green Lantern crossover.
Which, I have to say I loved.
I knew you were gonna. I knew you had something for this. I knew it.
I read the first one, and then I found out that they had a second one out, and I was like, "Oh man, I've been chomping at the bit to read it."
Yeah,
but I've only been reading books for the podcast lately, and I'm like, it's still sitting on my phone. Why haven't I read it yet?
All right. So before we jump into Locke and Key itself, what other things have you been up to, Dane?
So recently, my wife and I have been trying to find a good horror movie to watch.
Okay.
And we watched two recently that people either really love or really hate. And they're fairly new. It was Mother with Jennifer Lawrence.
Okay.
And then the other one was Hereditary with Toni Collette.
I've heard a lot of good things about Hereditary.
I have to say I was actually disappointed by both of them.
See, and I've heard Mother was okay, and it wasn't great, but
Mother's done really artistically well, and once you figure out what the big twist is, it's not scary.
Yeah.
But you find out what the twist is, and you're like, holy shit, this is an interesting take on that, something I've never seen. But Hereditary, people always say, oh yeah, Hereditary, it's so scary. And the most disturbing part isn't about the supernatural things that are happening. It's about what happens to the brother and what he does. So you're like, ugh. It's so, I don't know. It was just disappointing.
That's fair. I don't do horror movies all that often. I believe in too many of that shit. Like, ghosts in my blood could be a real thing, and I want to avoid that as much as possible. Aliens, 100%. There's no way that we're alone in this universe.
Right.
So when I see an alien movie, Signs freaked me the fuck out for years. I couldn't, that scene where it's the newscasting and, a bunch of Hispanic kids or Brazilian kids, I can't remember.
Yeah.
But they're all screaming and running around, and then, the camera's jostling around, and you're like, what's going on? What's going on? And then all of a sudden you see the alien walk across the gap, and you're like, oh dear Lord, oh no, make it stop, go away, no! No! Yeah, no, that's not for me.
And it's almost like that Bigfoot-esque video footage.
Yeah, it totally is. Totally is. I have been, I have insomnia pretty bad. And so my insomnia nights have been me level grinding in Kingdom Hearts 1, 1.5.
I bought my wife the 1.5 and 2.5 for the PS4.
Yeah.
And she wound up grinding through the first two games, and she's like, okay, I'm done. I'm like, wait, there's 4 more on there.
Yeah.
She's like, no, I'm done. I'm good.
What?
Yeah.
Blasphemy.
Right?
It's Kingdom Hearts. It's all or nothing.
And I've been playing Kingdom Hearts 3D, the Dream Drop Distance. Surprisingly better than I thought it was going to be.
I started it, and I couldn't get into it purely because I was playing it on the 3DS. So it didn't really grab me as much, but I'm excited to get to that one because I bought the collection as well. But Kaylin and I have actually been playing that together, so I can't do story things without her there, which is frustrating because it's like, the Nightmare World. It's right there. That's my favorite one to do. I love Nightmare World.
Well, in 2.8 is actually a port to the PS4.
Oh, cool.
So if you have 2.8, then it's the same game.
Okay. So yeah, just doing some level grinding on that. I read this one comic book, and we may cover this later, but it's called God Country. And it's like a 6-issue run, and we will constantly talk about my daddy issues because that's all that I am, right?
It's inevitable. You cannot avoid it.
Exactly.
That's going to be this episode for me. I will warn you guys ahead of time.
But anyways, like the premise is that it's this man, his new wife, their 6-year-old child, and he's trying to take care of his Alzheimer father. And it's beyond the point of like any recognition. There is no memory there. It is the rage-induced Alzheimer old man. And then a magic sword falls from space, and it cures his Alzheimer's as long as he's holding the sword. And like I really thought that daddy issues was really going to get to me, but it didn't hit me as much as when like the grandfather is sitting there talking about how like I had to remember my wife's death a second time. And I was like, oh gosh. And I'm reading this at work, and I'm stuck in this like small office, smaller than the recording space that we're in now. And I'm next to my coworker, and I'm sitting there, and I'm in tears, and I'm like, Andy, I need to go to the bathroom and get a tissue real quick. And he goes, are you okay? I was like, yeah, this is one hell of a ride, man. One hell of a ride. Yeah, no, it's really good. I think we'll probably have to cover that later on. It's a pretty quick read, though. It took me like less than an hour.
Yeah.
I'll send that one over to you.
Well, and I've been reading because, again, we've talked about it. We've talked about jumping into it. I've been reading Venom Lethal Protector.
Oh, yeah.
And I love it, but at the same time, there are just so many things that I am trying not to nitpick because I'm looking at it through these nostalgia glasses of, oh man, this was Venom when I was a kid. This is the artwork that I love. Mm-hmm. This is the storyline that I love. But there are just so many times where I'm like, okay, David Michelini, you don't have to explain absolutely everything that is happening in the panel with speech. Everybody's saying, oh no, look, he's breaking out of jail. It's like, yes, we see that. Move on.
Clearly, he does not have much trust in his artist.
No. And that's the worst part is Mark Bagley. Like I say, he is my definitive Spider-Man author, or Spider-Man artist.
Yeah.
Because he had the Venom that had the big, huge muscles, the over-exaggerated tongue and fangs, and drool everywhere. In fact, in one panel, Venom is trying to break into this building, the Treese Foundation. He's crawling on the ceiling, and he's drooling, and you just see it dripping on the floor. And you're like, that's kind of gross. He's drooling, it's running over his eyes, dripping onto the floor. And then the next panel, you see the security team break in and say, oh, yes, we followed the slime trail. It's like, yeah, it would not be hard following this green slime.
At least they're consistent. Like, at least they acknowledge, like, because they're so like, how did we find him? Like, and only the superhero, only Batman sees the trail on the ground that everyone in the audience can see. And it's like, no, come on, fucking look down for 2 seconds. Yeah. I'm excited to read that one when I get the chance. Kaylin, what have you been up to?
So I tend to read a lot of nonfiction stuff around relationship styles. Most recently, I read Love's Not Colorblind by Kevin Patterson. That was wonderful. In the fiction realm, I've been doing a lot of queer media because super gay. That helps. Sorry, David. So I watched Carol recently, which was enjoyable in its own way. But I read Discount Armageddon by Seanan McGuire. Seanan McGuire also wrote Every Heart a Doorway and the Wayward Children series, which actually reminded me a lot of Locke and Key. Mm-hmm. A lot of similar themes of children disappearing through doorways and going to other worlds.
Okay.
Discount Armageddon was more of a Dresden Files style urban fantasy with a girl who works in a strip club that came from this fantasy... Very urban fantasy, all of these paranormal things exist within the world, and her family has learned how to coexist between the two, how to kill the monsters that get out of line, and how to navigate healthy relationships with the ones that integrated into human society.
Interesting.
So, super fascinating. I really like Seanan McGuire's work.
Cool.
All you had to say was the Dresden Files, and I'm into it because
right.
I've been listening to the audiobooks over for the third time.
They're so good.
James Marsters does such a good job in that.
Yeah, and I hated Ghost Story because John Glover took over for one book, and I love that book, but listening to it, I was just like, he's not James Marsters.
Especially when he does the priest. What's his name? What's the
so
priest?
So much guilt.
I know, it's...
He's so wonderful, and I love him.
He's Michael's friend. Father Fort Hill.
Father Fort Hill.
Yeah. Yes.
So this other guy, he comes in, and we know Father Fort Hill, and he's a very confident man. He speaks very slowly and plainly. And then all of a sudden, he has this Irish accent out of nowhere. And I don't understand why does he need to talk like this all of a sudden? He's not a first-generation immigrant. He's not even an immigrant at all. Like, I just don't understand it. And it's like, what is happening? But no, James Marster actually redid it.
Oh, good. Because the version that I have is the John Glover one, and I'm in Full Moon right now, and I'm going, okay, I still have 11 books. I still have 9 books to get to before I hit Ghost Story. I don't know if I can do it.
Ghost Story was hard for me purely because of that reason, yeah. And I remember I reread it and I was like, oh, this is actually good.
Oh, yeah.
See, I didn't even mind John Glover reading it just because the story was so compelling to me. Just the concept of our main character is dead for this entire book. How the hell is he going to navigate this? But it's so solid.
Yeah.
And it's also
spoilers.
Dresden. It's also Dresden, coming to terms with the fact that what he has predefined as a ghost isn't really what the definition is. It's not really what the reality of it is.
Yeah.
And speaking of, I also have been reading Welcome to the Jungle, the graphic novel. That's
I read that
the prequel series.
That was good.
I love it, and I love the fact that he added the short story of the Dresden Files, where it's the first story he ever wrote for Dresden.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's a good one. And maybe we'll have to cover that in a later episode. But now that we've caught up with each other, let's jump into Locke and Key. So where do we want to begin? Do we want to do more story, or do we want to do more of the characters?
I say we just jump into story and let the characters just come in as they come in.
Yeah.
Cool. So I love this, this starts off in such a great way. Now, last month, I talked about how I really didn't like the way that Why the Last Man kept jumping back and forth between story arcs, because it felt like such a way... see, I wrote it down really well. I thought I did, at least. Where last month I talked about the flashbacks and jumps kind of pulled me out of it. I feel like this is a great use of how to tell multiple stories in this way of a time lapse. Where Why the Last Man, it felt like next time on Why the Last Man, or previously on Why the Last Man. It kind of felt like a reason that you have to stick with it. Whereas this, it tells two different stories that broadens your scope. And not in kind of the TV show Arrow, where it's like, oh, and this is how he learned how to shoot a bow and arrow six seasons in.
And this is how he learned magic from Constantine.
Yeah, because it's all flashbacks while he was on the island, and it's a Deus Ex Machina backstory, right? And it's like, oh, he actually knew this the entire time. No, give me some cool, it started out really great of this relationship that he started on the island, but this has such a great momentum in the backstories, where I don't feel like it's a previously on. It's expanding the world simultaneously.
For me, it feels like you're not necessarily jumping back and forth in the storyline. It feels like these characters are allowing you into their memories. Yeah. Allowing you to see what they saw and how they felt.
Totally. Yeah. So it starts out, we start the story out in Mendocino Valley. In a nice little suburban summer cottage, it seems. And the first people that we see is one holding an axe and one holding a gun. And they're knocking on a door, and they're like, oh, hey, Mrs. Locke, your husband, who's our school counselor, said, told us we could come by anytime that we wanted. Oh, cool, come on in. And then, oh yeah, we're just visiting our uncle. And then it pans down to the back of a pickup trunk with 2 bodies brutally destroyed in it, blood everywhere.
Now, the first panel on the very first page automatically throws out some really heavy symbolism.
Okay.
Because the very first page, you see a door, but then you also see this little moth.
Yeah.
And that moth is actually what's referred to as a death's head moth.
Like in Silence of the Lambs?
Exactly.
Okay.
They're seen as harbingers of death.
Ooh.
So the fact that the very first thing you see is this death's head moth floating into this door, it's automatically showing you that someone is going to die.
Interesting. That is, I saw the moth and I didn't draw that connection. That's really fascinating. And then the next thing that we see after this bloody trunk is we see one of the main characters, Tyler, and he's fantasizing about what his summer could actually be instead of being stuck with his family. Standard, typical teenage drama.
Stereotypical teenage crisis of self, because he's saying, I wish that I could be this, or I wish that I could be this, when in reality, I am me.
Yeah.
I am this.
Yeah, he's not at that point where he's willing to be able to accept himself. And that's a great character arc for someone to be on if it's going to be done well. And with Joe Hill, I feel like, honestly, this story arc could very easily be really, really good, or it may even be kind of wiped out because of the fact that there could be too many things going on. As someone who's read all of them before, I'm going to try and not divulge too much out of what comes out of the next few volumes, but I can't guarantee that I'll be 100%.
It's interesting because if you actually look at Tyler and then you look at Joe Hill himself, Tyler is almost like symbolically Joe Hill, because he has that crisis of identity where my dad is Stephen King, so I don't know what I'm supposed to be.
I thought you were talking like physically, and I'm looking at these two people and I'm like, Joe Hill looks nothing like Tyler. What the fuck are you talking about? Sorry, continue.
But, I mean, Joe Hill has this prolific author of a father, and he was trying to discover what he wanted to do, and he himself has become an author who, by my standards, is actually really good. I mean, he's written some really interesting, really fascinating things, kind of tying into a little bit of what his father has written within the whole horror aspect, but making it his own. For example, Horns. Yeah. It was a quasi-horror, but it also was comedic. Yeah. So I see Tyler as Joe Hill putting himself in the book.
This was something that Kaylin and I were talking about, how Stephen King has this great ideas. What did you call him?
Oh, Stephen King's a discovery writer.
Yes.
He has a concept, he follows through, and then has no idea what he's going to do at the end. And so generally speaking, in a lot of Stephen King novels, it ends up with some sort of deus ex machina, tries to throw everything together, and usually ends up being pretty disappointing, at least by my standards.
Have you seen Maximum Overdrive?
No, I have not.
Don't.
Duly noted.
Because Stephen King wrote and directed this movie, Maximum Overdrive, and the entire premise of the story is all of the machines on Earth wind up gaining their own sentience and revolting against humanity.
Oh, I remember this now.
Yeah, the one with the green goblin truck.
Oh, this was so bad.
It turns out Stephen King made almost this entire movie high on cocaine.
Shocking.
Right?
I'm so surprised.
But, I mean, the whole movie, you've got these people hiding in this truck stop trying to survive, and the whole ending is just completely disappointing. He throws in all of these tidbits saying, okay, maybe it was aliens. Okay, maybe it was this asteroid. And then in the end, it's really just nothing. Matter. It doesn't matter. They just came to life.
Yeah, they just go to an island and then it ends. That's it.
And that's part of what I really liked about the Locke and Key story was that all of the writing was very deliberate. You knew where it was going. Every sentence had a purpose and sometimes even fulfilled multiple purposes, which is just such a tenet of good writing that people don't seem to understand. So already I'm enjoying Joe Hill way more than Stephen King.
Oh, yeah.
So
So
yes,
we see Ty we meet Bode, and he's probably 6 or 7 years old. Yes. Experiencing nature as a true child would. He finds a turtle craps his hand, he wants to show his brother. And then their sister, who I can't remember her name off the top of my head, Kinsey. Who's criticizing Tyler for his, as he puts it, experiencing boredom and existential angst, which I appreciate any teenager who can clearly call upon their own shit and be like, yeah, I'm being a shitty teenager. Allow me this moment. Fuck off for 2 minutes. And he complains about how he could be doing so many other things, but the terrible bandit that is Dad is making us do all these things. And Kinsey's like, get the fuck over it.
And it's kind of interesting because Kinsey, when you first see her, she's got the dreads, she's got the piercings, she's really tomboyish, and she reminded me of Tom Sawyer, but in a responsible way. Because she's like, oh, hey, we've got to go whitewash this fence. And it's like, wait, but Tom Sawyer was the one who tried to get other people. And she's like, I'm going to help you. It's like, she's the inverse of Tom Sawyer.
I can see that. I like that. I like that imagery quite a lot. So while they are starting to trudge back up to the house to finish painting, we get kind of this silent frame with the father walking into the cabin with covered in paint roller, and he's covered by this hatchet. And we see one of the other bad guys with a gun out of his vision, and we don't see much of anything of this kind of violence. The next panel that we see is this beautifully drawn, beautifully depicted funeral scene where there's this bright red urn. I had to actually get my little color scanner app to figure out what color it is, because it's, even to my colorblind eyes, this was very vibrant in comparison. Everybody's mourning, and we see Ty standing in front of it and just not even sure what to do. Like, he's got this forlorn look upon his face, but there's so much loss and being lost in his eyes. And I love the next couple of panels after this, because you can always see the red urn just out of the corner of the frame. And it's so beautifully done. Other people come in, they try and don't know how to talk to him. Like, oh man, you should have been there. There was this one chick. And then maybe his emo gothic friend is like, oh, hey man, at least your dad truly knows what it means to be alive. And then Ty gives him a fuck off kind of look. And it's this great progression of how this artwork is. And it's this constant reminder and weight behind every panel of you see his father in his final form.
I believe the people he was talking to at that point were the people he referenced earlier, that I wish I could be them.
Yeah, I wish I could
be the surfer. I wish I could be the rocker.
And in that moment, with that weight, you can feel how pointless he realizes everything actually is.
Yeah.
And even though he was just pining to be one of these humans, they all seem... What is the word I want here?
Trivial?
Yes. It's all trivial. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It means nothing at this point.
And it really does, yeah.
And this is where my daddy issues started to come in.
Oh, goody.
Because, I was 21 years old when my dad passed away. My dad was 44 years old, and I was the one that was in Utah. My sister was living in Idaho. My brother was in the Marine Corps. And my mom called on me 5 o'clock in the morning, 45 minutes before I'm supposed to be at work, and says, hey, I need you to come over. Okay, what's going on? She says, your dad's dead. And just that bluntly. But this is where Joe Hill actually starts to show just how awesome of an author he actually is. Because being the oldest son, I'm not the oldest child, but I am the oldest son. The well-wishers at funerals they all are the same typical kind of person. They walk up to you. They don't know how to help you. They don't know what to say. So they say their stereotypical, oh, well, I'm sorry for your loss. And then they move on to the typical small talk.
Yeah.
The small talk that you're sitting there dealing with this really heavy thing. And it does not matter to you at that point in time. It's like, okay, you know what? Just get the fuck away from me. And I remember being that guy standing in line as all of these well-wishers kept walking up to me as we're doing the viewing, and they kept saying things like, "Oh, I'm sorry, but he's in a better place." And I just completely tuned out. I just started shaking hands and nodding, not even smiling, just nodding. And it wasn't until my dad's best friend came up to me and he says, "You know what? This fucking sucks." And I was like, "Yeah, I know." And he says, "Your dad, I'll admit, wasn't the greatest of guys all the time." Mm-hmm. I'm like, "I know." He goes, "But he's gone and it hurts and I'm sorry." And that's what Duncan is at this point in time, is he's the one that comes to Tyler, sits down and says, "Hey, you know what? I know you and your dad didn't get along, but he's gone. Anything you had to say to him, you can't say to him anymore. And I'm sorry. I'm not trying to replace him, but I'm in pain too. So let's experience this pain together."
That's hard stuff.
And I also wrote down that this was the truest representation of a funeral that I have ever seen or read in any media forum.
Agreed.
That's fantastic. I've been to my fair share of funerals, and I've never been part of the family, right? I've been torn up. These people are passed away. I grew up not far from a gated retirement community. So like the people that I grew up learning so much about very quickly would pass on, oh, I'm about to hit my 20s and then all these people are passing away. And so for me, this is just like, I am one of those vultures that their Uncle Duncan talks about, of like, only a few more minutes and all the vulture leaves. Because you're right. In that moment, in the inverse, I don't know what to say to these people. I don't know how to interact with them. I don't know how they're grieving. All I can do is give them my love, give them a hug, and then give them space until they can ask for what they need, right? So you're absolutely right. There's just this uselessness of being on the other side of that funeral. And it's so easily depicted, and it's so clearly, this isn't his focus. This isn't Tyler's focus. It's that urn that's in the back of the frame the entire time.
Right, because if you look at almost every single panel, the only time Tyler actually looks away is when people actually do come up to him and start that trivial small talk. He looks at them with that look that says, "Go away." Mm-hmm. And the only person he doesn't look like that at is his Uncle Duncan.
Yeah.
His Uncle Duncan is the only one who actually gets him to open up and start crying, start feeling.
Yeah. And it's this heartwarming and gut-wrenching moment when we're just like, we're going to move from San Francisco to Lovecraft, Massachusetts. And it's going to be okay, and we're going to get out of here, and it's just, they're holding each other, and they're breaking down. Meanwhile, there's also this flashback that Tyler is having of one night where his parents stumbled home drunk. This is clearly 10 years earlier. But his father says, if anything happens to me, move to the house, move to the Locke house, because that's where they need to be.
And Duncan will help take care of them.
Duncan will take care of them. And they're like, well, why didn't you get the house if you're the bigger brother? And he goes, that's not how it works. The house chose Duncan. So you're like, already like, okay, either he's drunk and he's crazy, or there's something else going on. So there's this hint of something magical, but it's not overbearing. It's not the glowing meteorite in the crater. It's
not hitting you over the head with all of this. It's very subtle.
It just piques. It's enough to pique your interest without coming on too strong.
Totally. So once they confirm that they're going to be moving to back to Massachusetts, they jump back in time to just as the murder is happening. And the kids are walking back into the cabin. They hear gunshots. Bode is even playing with that moth. Now that I'm looking at it, man.
He's chasing the moth around with a stick, and the first gunshot doesn't actually occur until the moth flies off.
Yeah, you don't see him in frame anymore.
So it's kind of one of those interesting dilemmas of, if Bode had actually killed the moth with the stick, would his dad have died?
That's very Very interesting. I hadn't considered that.
Symbolism.
Right?
So very quickly, Tyler looks in the window after hearing the gunshot, sees bloody Sam Lesser, who is the gunman at this point, and freaks out. You see that the mother has been beaten, but you don't really get a full sense of what has happened to their mother. You just see kind of bloody handprints here and there.
Well, the second assailant actually comes out of the room, and you see him pulling up his pants.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're just like, oh, shit. This is a lot darker than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. So, because of the fact that they were painting the house, Tyler trips over some paint cans, and Sam is going to go looking outside, and he sees a series of footprints leading to the basement. And the next panel is really beautifully done. You see the footprints leading into the basement. It's Sam calling out to Tyler because you find out they were school buddies. While behind a chimney up on the roof is Kinsey and Bode holding on to each other as Kinsey is biting her lower lip, trying to be as silent as possible. And it's such a tense drawing that you're just like, oh gosh, I don't know what's going to happen next. And then what happens next is we're now in the present as Duncan and Tyler are talking as they're driving across the country. And you're just like, oh my gosh, stop doing this to me and just give me the story. Now, normally this would have pulled me out, but I was just so involved in both storylines, as I had said.
You wanted to read to the point where you could actually get back to that memory.
Exactly.
And the way that they do the flashbacks here, it's very reminiscent of the grief process, at least for me. So because you have all of this, everything is going on. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of action in those memories, but then you have that mixed in with the mundane. And so you have that cognitive dissonance as you are reading it.
Totally.
So well done.
Very well done.
And while I was reading it with the whole paint can situation, I was thinking to myself, okay, Tyler is either incredibly smart or incredibly stupid because he's tracking paint into the basement. So he's incredibly smart by the fact that he is leading Sam away from Kinsey and Bode.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's running into the basement. So you know that there's going to be some sort of confrontation between him and Sam because basements only have a finite amount of space.
Yeah, totally. It flashes forward. We see the Locke house for what it is, this fantastic Victorian Gothic mixture. It's very beautifully done. Looks very much like something that you would see out of an old horror movie. And it looks beautiful. I would love to stay in this house. Keys and all. And it looks really nice. They're all kind of like antsy, so they're all going to go exploring. And then we go back to the past. And it's now Sam in the basement following the footsteps. And it's that moment of like, oh, either it dawned on him that he was making the tracks or he did this intentionally. Because he took off his shoe after a few steps and then backtracked to try and get the drop on Sam, the gunman. A fight ensues. It's dark, it's gory, but again, that highlights of red is so clear, even to me, that it just it makes everything pop so well in the visuals.
And the artist in this is really, really good at using the color red to draw your eye.
Totally.
The funeral situation, your eye is inexorably drawn to that urn. I mean, you see everything else around it, and it's all black and white. And so you're automatically drawn to that red.
Totally.
Same situation here, where the black is what's actually happening. The red is the negative space, but the red is accenting the actual shadows so much that your eye is drawn to this panel.
Totally. So a fight ensues, gunshots go off, and Tyler beats in Sam Lesser's face with a brick. And it's gory, and it's... You have this moment of victory with a question mark because you see this panicked face on Ty, like, again, encapsulated in shadow, so that way you see some of this concern, but you also know, like, okay, 1 is done. On to number 2, right? He goes upstairs, he pulls the gun on the second assailant with the axe, and he goes, What a fucking moron. I counted the shots. It's a revolver. It's only going to hold up to 6 shots at a time. Counted 7. And like, you're all good at this point. And that's when the mother comes in with the axe.
She's so badass
so
at this
cool.
point.
Such a great moment.
I wrote this down. It says, Mom is badass with a hatchet.
And like, you see like the eyes go in different ways on the assailant, and it's a really great moment. Blood. So good. Really loved it. Covered in tears, and she's just run, get out of the house, just get out of here. And then we see 3 different shots, and I feel like this is really important. We see Ty looking into the basement at his dead father's body. Mm-hmm. But the next panel is him looking at a picture of his father at the funeral, and then him looking down at the swimming pool or the decorative pond. And this is a recurring theme for Tyler, is looking into water and seeing something else, seeing something, what he may want or what he thinks he wants.
Or what he thinks he's becoming.
Yeah. Exactly. And we see that, like, later on, Tyler has these flashes of trauma jump back to him. He's re-bricking some of the path, and you see that shot again of him standing above Sam Lesser, but now he's at the Lovecraft house with a brick and a trowel in his hand, and he's just trying to lay down brick, and just there's this body in front of him now, right? This happens over and over again, and it's something that it's very well depicting how trauma hits us when we don't necessarily expect it. And I feel like just Tyler's character and his arc of him trying to deal with this trauma is very accurate to how a teenager who is not getting any mental support or emotional emotional therapy, is going to be accurate. They're just going to sit there and think about it and try and move on, and think about it and try and move on, and it's so beautifully done. And he goes back to looking at the pool again, and it's so great. And when he's looking at the pool, he sees himself holding the gun, the brick, and covered in blood again.
And I actually wrote this down too. At this point, I said, shit, I was Tyler around my dad's death, because my dad called me 2 days before he passed away to ask me if I could come over and have dinner. Come to find out, he'd gotten bad medical advice, followed that medical advice, and wound up dying. So I had that survivor's guilt of, if I had gone, could I have saved my dad? With Tyler, he's having that same feeling of, if I had actually gone in there first, if I had just been a better son to my father, could I have helped save him?
And that's not even like, let's jump forward a little bit. Audience, as you remember, spoilers are abound. But later on, we learned that Sam, the gunman, was talking with Tyler after they both kind of had. Tyler had a fight with his father, and Sam had an appointment with his father. And his father said, like, hey, I can't support what you're doing, Sam. You're becoming more violent. You had this great ride to a college, but I'm not going to write that letter of recommendation anymore. So Ty, being the angsty teenager, he goes, I wish my dad was dead. If you're going to kill him, let me know.
Right. And Ty actually says that at this point in time. He says, I don't care what I told Sam.
Yeah.
And that's all he says up until the point where you actually see that flashback. So you're like, oh shit, did he tell Sam to do this?
Is he the one who gave the idea? And that's something that Ty's going to have to live with for the rest of his life, where he said out loud, kill my dad for me, and the action came through. And that's such a heartbreaking thing, where you look at the consequences of your actions, and nobody truly understands how much weight our words truly have until a moment like this.
Well, it's like we were talking about with Avengers versus X-Men and Spider-Man taking down Colossus and Magic. He used nothing but words.
Yeah.
And so words actually hold more weight than we give them credit. I mean, yes, you can say that words only have as much power as we give them, but the subconscious gives words weight.
Yeah, totally. So Kinsey and Tyler, they talk a little bit. They're going to go inside the house. They're going to look for Bode because it's been 10 minutes and he's probably already killed himself with all the great things. And the next thing that we see is him doing the thing that I would do, even today, as a 27-year-old adult. I would still be looking at the shield with the family crest and 2 swords underneath it. You're fucking right, I'd stack a bunch of books and go grab the swords. Are you kidding me?
Curiosity and ingenuity are things that kids have in leaps and bounds. I mean, he stacks a pile of books so he could go play with some swords.
Yeah. So he goes to the swords, but then he actually loses interest because he sees something shiny on top of a door sill. And then he stacks more books after the sword falls down and almost hits him. Stacks more books and then a table stool of some sort on top of said books, grabs a broom to sweep off whatever he found shiny, and he finds a key with a skull on it right next to a doorknob with a skull on it. And he clicks it open. And again, we're jumping to another story arc of Sam Lesser in prison, probably in solitary of some sort, and something in the water is talking to him, and we're not quite sure what it is. And then we see this face come out talking to him, and it's like, you lied to me. You said I was going to be in a better place. You said you'd give me more power.
You said you'd give me a new face.
A new face, yes. I did everything you asked. You promised me a new home, a new face. And the face in the water says, I gave you both. And you're like, oh shit. Oh no. Run, Sam, run!
It's the story of the djinn. Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Be more specific.
Yeah. Be very specific. And then the face in the water promises to get him out, promises to give him the power. And he's like, well, we'll win. And then we go back to the Locke house where Sam walks through the door that he just unlocked. And...
You mean Bode?
Bode. Fuck. I'm
it's
terrible with
There's
names.
A lot of characters.
Not near as many as the Avengers vs. X-Men, but yes.
Or even Y the Last Man.
Yeah. But so Bode walks through the door that he just unlocked. And this was a great moment. I was playing Kingdom Hearts while Kaylin was reading this. And then all of a sudden I hear, whoa. It was a cool moment. Like we did not know. Like, the hinting is so subtle. Like, you have to look back on the hinting, right? Mm-hmm. But now, like, we actually see that this house has some sort of power to it. And we see Bode leave his body behind.
And it's quite disturbing because the body literally is nothing more than a body on the ground. You see Bode, and he's literally just laying there, almost like a dead fly on the windowsill.
Mm-hmm. Empty sock.
Yeah. He's just laying there, just staring at himself. And I found this part kind of disturbing because Bode enjoys being a ghost.
Yeah.
Way more than he should.
I mean, let's talk about Bode for a second. I really like Bode's character, but this child is such pure innocence. This child needs therapy. This child needs more support than this family can provide, and it breaks my heart that nobody's doing this, right? And I get that, like,
they all have their own shit. Right,
and this is fantasy, and we don't want to break the repetition with some sort of monotony of therapy, and nobody wants to see a therapy session unless you're that Michael J. Fox TV show where they cut in therapy sessions at the end of the series. But yeah, I mean, those are fun, and they can be well done, but this child needs support.
Well, and he was so starved for attention that he actually enjoyed being bullied by Tyler because it was the only contact he had with his older brother.
Yeah.
So he actually does wind up stating the games that we used to play were really fun, and it shows these panels of Tyler basically telling Bode to get the fuck away from me, you stupid, weird little kid. But Bode is looking at it and saying, I love Tyler. I love the games we play.
Yeah. And it's heartbreaking because this kid, if this kid is getting escapism from being dead, this kid's going to have problems when he's a teenager. This kid's going to have problems when he's an adult. And that's heartbreaking. Not to mention, like, what's going to happen from here as throughout the rest of their life. Because I always think about the end of a horror movie. think about Ripley, and let's assume that aliens did not happen. How much fucking therapy did Ripley need after watching all of her friends and coworkers being devoured by an alien?
Well, and then on top of that, I mean, you always get those sequels where in the next movie, the character is fine.
Yeah.
I mean, the first Alien, Ripley, you find out, has a child.
Mm-hmm.
The second Alien movie takes place far enough in the future that Ripley's daughter is dead from old age.
Yeah.
And Ripley is just okay with it. She's just like, okay, well, my daughter lived a good life, so okay, on to LV-424.
Yeah. Now, she is having traumatic nightmares, night terrors, but at the same time, like, any other story with that has a sequel where this happened once, it just doesn't do any justice to the psyche of the human mind and how fragile it really is.
And she had 4 movies.
Yeah.
And in every, I mean, okay, the first 2 Aliens, I love.
Wait, there's more beyond the first 2?
Alien 3.
What are you talking about? I don't think this is real.
Denial.
Yeah.
There we go.
You know, I would be in that state of denial if my dad hadn't sat me down and said, oh yes, there's more Alien movies. You watched the 2 that were good. Now it's time to punish you. And I'm going, what did I do to deserve Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection?
Why, Wachowskis? Why did you give me Matrix 2 and 3? No!
Or Jupiter Ascending.
Oh gosh. So like, yeah, these people are gonna have problems just off of what we've seen in these 8-10 pages,
which is something I really love. Everybody went through this kind of trauma, and everybody is dealing with it very differently.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes more and more clear as you're working your way through the volume.
Totally.
Like, how each character, because Tyler's just gone. He's disassociated. He's not present. Kinsey, for some reason I want to say Ripley now. Kinsey is just completely, I'm going to change everything. I'm going to be quiet and reserved, and nobody will look at me, and I will let nobody in, but I will survive.
Yeah.
Kinsey's actually going through a form of survivor's guilt.
Oh, yeah.
Because she's changing her appearance. She is trying to be unobtrusive. She's trying to be ignored by everyone. But the problem with that is when you try to fade into the background,
you stand out.
Yeah.
Now, I talking about Kinsey, I think Kinsey actually has the best efforts in mind. She's trying to make changes. She's trying to move on from it. And we see by this end of this, she gets kind of a whole issue to herself. She does cut her hair, and she brings out the dreadlocks so she has regular hair again, and then she tries to fade into the background. And she just like, this isn't me. I need to be me, and how can I do that? So she cuts her hair, she gets a long braid, she stands out in the crowd again a little bit, and she's going back and trying to socialize again. This is like the one character who I think has a chance of a future after this.
Well, you were saying the other characters too. I mean, they're all dealing with... Nobody is actually dealing with the death at all.
Yeah.
I mean, you have Tyler, who isn't talking about the fact that he's killed one... Well, he's...
Or at least thought he killed somebody.
Yeah, he's dealing with the guilt of possibly having put the earworm into Sam about killing his dad.
Mm-hmm.
He's also dealing with the fact that he brutally assaulted and nearly murdered Sam.
Yeah.
He's also dealing with the fact that he doesn't have his dad to talk to anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So he's figuring, I'm not talking to anyone.
Yeah.
Bode is using the escapism of becoming a ghost, and it's interesting because he talks about a couple of times talking to his dad while he's a ghost. So he's using that as a way of coping with his dad not being there, is becoming a ghost to talk to dad.
Yeah.
Mom?
Just getting real drunk.
Oh, yeah. She becomes a flat-out alcoholic. I mean, when she and Duncan are taking bottles of wine into the cellar, she's like, hey, where's that wine that my mom sent me? Where is it? And he's like, I put it on the top shelf. And she's like, well, we're in a cellar. It doesn't matter where you put it. I can go ahead and take any of these wine bottles.
And the fact that her mother sent the wine, tells me, okay, so it's a family problem. The alcoholism gene is a trait that can be passed from generation to generation. So mom understands you're coping. You need wine. So that's healthy.
I mean, Duncan is the only person who's actually coming out and trying to help these people come to terms with it. But everybody's just in that stage of grief where they're all in denial. They're like, totally. You know what? I don't need help.
So back to the story. Bode walks through the door. We find out it's either the dead door or the ghost key or something along those lines. But we see your moth again. And it lands on Bode's body until Bode goes back into the body and the moth flies off. That's the end of the first issue. Second issue picks up kind of with more of an understanding of a start. We see Bode's drawing of what happened to him over the summer, filled with grammatical errors, terrible drawings, and then a note from the teacher going, your kid's freaking out the other kids. We need to talk about this. And it's a conversation between the mother. I have her name.
Nina. That was one thing I could never. It never stuck to me. It was always Mom, not Nina, because everybody else calls her Mom.
So Nina and Duncan talking, and they're like, "Yeah, this is a lot of shit." They're sharing a glass of wine. This is our first indication of the alcoholism. But by the end of it, like I don't know, I got a sense of a little bit of a sexual tension almost out of these two characters. But that might have been me projecting what happens later on.
That's probably you projecting what happens later on, because when in the very first issue, when Mom and Dad, whatever their names are, Nina and something that starts with an R,
Rendell.
Yes, thank you.
Strange name. When they're talking and she mentions like, why didn't you get the house? Oh, the house chose him. They make some sort of comment about how he's a fairy, which, So at this point, my interpretation was just like, okay, so he might be some sort of queer
presenting character.
Well, not necessarily queer presenting, but could be gay, could be bi, could not be straight.
Yeah. Okay.
Potentially.
That's fair.
So that's where I very much interpreted their interactions as just very platonic, very like, I'm trying to support you. I also cared about this man.
Familial.
Because he's my brother, yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. And we get to see the mother kind of, as she is post this trauma, drinking wine. She's now with a cane. Obviously, she got messed up in the event. But we see Bode spying on them in ghost form. And we follow Bode as he's giving us this dialogue of what happens to him as he's in ghost form, and he realizes he can focus on anybody. He can visit Tyler and visits him in the shower and turns his water cold. And he visits Kinsey, and she's now without the dreadlocks, and she's reliving that trauma, hugging a pillow, and he actually is brought into that memory of them back onto the chimney, crying, and she's biting her lip so hard it's bleeding even. And when he tries to talk to them about it, of like, hey, I've done this thing and I've been to these places, both of them kind of like, hey, back the fuck off. Kinsey throws something at him, and Tyler shoves him aside, literally just hand and face, moves him away, and he says, I hope you enjoy cold showers. So Mom and Bode, Nina, have this conversation as he's fishing in the swimming pool. And he's got this little magnet. I think it's like the treasure finder of 5,000 or whatever. Yep. And they're just like, hey, don't draw any more scary pictures, please.
Well, and this was interesting because it just shows that nobody ever believes children when it comes to supernatural or paranormal things.
Yeah.
Because the mom obviously doesn't believe Bode about becoming a ghost.
Yeah.
And when she's actually talking to Duncan about it, Duncan gets a nervous look on his face and actually tells her, oh yeah, that's a game that Rendell and I used to play when we were kids. So you know that Duncan
knows.
Duncan fully knows what's going on, but he can't tell Nina because if Nina knows, she might move out. She might leave.
Well, she'd probably just think he was crazy.
Yeah.
Or traumatized in his own grief. Like, I do not think if he try to be honest with any of them that they would believe him at this point.
Totally.
And Rendell, actually, in that memory back during the funeral, does wind up saying that the house is unique, that things happen in the house. But as the story progresses, you find out that the older you get and the more time you spend away from the Locke house, the more you forget and the more your mind just brushes it off and says, oh, well, that was just a game. That was just a fantasy. That was just not real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So at this point, the mom walks away. Bode is still fishing, and they're at the well house. The well house is right next to the little pool. And he whistles, and he hears a tune back. Now, I think it's important to note that it's not the exact same tune. It is slightly different, where this one has, like, when he whistles, it's filled with quarter notes and half notes and 16th notes. What's given back is nothing but eighth notes. And I found that very interesting when I was looking at it. I was like, that's interesting that it's not the same, but it's close enough that you would think that it's like...
To the untrained ear, it sounds the same.
Yeah. And he goes in, and he sneaks inside the well house, and he starts talking to the echo. And he gets freaked out because the echo talks back, and he goes, wait. The echo goes, wait, don't go. And so he gets his siblings in there, and like, again, it's not believing the child. They see footprints, and the only ones that it belongs to is them. They know that the water's bad, so nobody would want to go in there to get water from the well. So it's like, Bode's being weird. Stop being weird. Stop going off doing your own thing. Let's go back inside. And this is when he starts having the dreams of his father. Bode's having these dreams, and it becomes this knock-knock joke. And it takes several dreams, and they're very, very disturbing dreams. And they're always of his father with this giant gunshot wound in his face.
And every time Bode wakes up, you can see a clock in the background, and it's always what's considered the witching hour.
3 a.m.?
Yeah.
Huh.
It's always 3 a.m., so he's always waking up in the middle of the witching hour, the time where the supernatural is most prevalent.
This artist is just brilliant.
Yeah.
On so many counts, and that is one of those things.
It's not just the artist, because like it is the trust between the artist and Joe Hill here. Mm-hmm. Gabriel Rodriguez is really great at making sure that these are well depicted, but you have these moments like in Venom where it's like, oh, he's breaking out. You don't need to say that. This is one of my problems that I have with DC, is that every picture is filled with text. Everything has to have something in there to give you context. And I hate context. Give me the visual clues. Make me hunt for it, because then it's so much more satisfying at the end of the day. And this is very clearly, the two of them have this great relationship where they can communicate very clearly on what needs to be done and how this needs to come about.
And it's also interesting, too, because this actually goes to show that Joe Hill knows quite a bit about paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
Because, okay, so bit of strange family history.
Okay.
So my wife is adopted.
Okay.
And her biological family came back into the picture roughly about a year after we got married.
Okay.
So actually about 3 months after my dad passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife's aunt was married to a guy who is a professional paranormal investigator. But he is the strangest freaking person I have ever met.
I think that's a requirement, isn't it? Like, if
Seems
you...
like it.
Yeah, he is the kind of guy, and, Philip, if you are listening to this, I love you. You're one of my best friends, but take your glasses off when you sleep, because they are so misformed from how often you've rolled over onto
No, this
them.
person isn't human. I'm sorry. If you sleep with your glasses on, it happens accidentally sometimes. I've done this a few times. But if you sleep with your glasses on, no, you're not human.
This is all the time. It's all the time. I mean, like I say, his glasses are so misformed that they are at a 45-degree angle a 90-degree angle in front of his face. But, as I was saying, this really goes into how much he knows about the paranormal. Mm-hmm. Because having been friends with Philip, having talked to him, come to find out, demons always go for the weak or the hurt or the injured.
Mm-hmm. So this family is prime prime rib.
Their prime rib, but Bode is the most prime target because he's innocent, because he's naive, and because he's dealing with his father's death. So the Echo coming to him and saying, oh, hey, I'll be your friend. Demons always act benevolent to gain trust. I mean, it's the whole situation with, I don't know if you guys know about the Annabelle doll.
I remember, I've seen some of the bits from the movies, but...
Well, the Annabelle doll, it was a demonic presence that these nurses were convinced was a little girl. And it said, hey, will you let me reside in your doll? And they said yes. And then the shit really hit the fan. This is kind of the same situation where it's gaining Bode's trust very slowly, very subtly, starting off as, oh, I'm you. I'm your Echo.
Yeah.
But I'm an Echo you can talk to.
Yeah.
And I was friends with your dad.
Yeah.
I was friends with Uncle Duncan. So it's trying to gain Bode's confidence. And with him being weak, injured, and young, it's much easier.
Yeah. There are so many things. Like, you are just hitting on so many parts that, like, okay, well, in volume 3, then, can't, no, don't, okay. All right. So Bode runs away, and he wants to investigate it, and he goes into ghost form, and he goes down to the bottom of the well, and he sees a woman standing there. And she's brushing her hair, and she looks like she's been there for a while. Now, this is something that I found very interesting. The woman at the bottom of the well looks very similar in aspects to Nina.
Oh, very.
Yes.
Okay, I'm glad it wasn't just me.
No.
Now, the eyes are completely different, and that's, like, one of the main things, but it still has a sharp, pointed nose, black, long hair, very frail body type. So I thought, like, that was very interesting. And I'm wondering if this is giving us a key into Rendell's psyche a little bit, or something just coincidence. But with the way that the art is and the way that the writing is, there's a
no coincidence.
Yeah, no, I doubt there are any coincidences here.
Yeah.
Everything is too deliberate.
So Bode talks to the Echo for a little bit, and they become pretty close. And like you said, the Echo knows how to manipulate Bode, right? And they kind of figure it all out, and you figure out the Echo can't leave. It can't walk through the door. It wants to. It's telling about the games that they used to play, and the Echo understands that there are magic doors in the house, and they have different powers.
And the Echo actually does start explaining some of the powers of these doors. You can walk through one door as a woman and come out as a man.
If you want to be in one place, you can open up a door and it'll take you any place you want to be. If you want to be a girl, you can be a girl. There's the Anywhere key. There's all these keys that will make you strong and make you fly and everything, and it's fantastic. So they become friends, and at one point they asked for the Echo asked for items. Why would an Echo need an item, right? But Bo drops them down and drops down a pair of scissors and a mirror, a hand mirror. And you see the Echo hold up the mirror, and it's fucking Red Skull on meth. Okay, it's like, Bo, you need to run away, child. Ah!
It's one of those things you're going, oh God, Bode, what did you just do? What did you do, boy?
Ah! No. So we flash back to Sam Lesser, who is now covered in prison tattoos. That he's clearly only done to himself, which is rather impressive. If you look at some, like, his shoulder work, looks pretty impressive for doing it all with your non-dominant hand. But then you see the voice is the Echo's talking to him again, and it's the scissors and it's the mirror, and you're like, fuck, damn it, not again. So it kind of brings Sam Lesser back. It brings real danger back into the moment of the characters. And I was like, when I read this, I was like, oh man, okay, is this going to be, how do we watch him break out? Like, does he hack the wires with the scissors or something and reflects the laser with the mirror? I was like, okay, how fantastical is this going to be? And it's not.
It's not.
It immediately, like...
It's not fantastical, but it is quite disturbing.
So very.
Because, like, you see a guard and a network engineer of some sorts. Probably something along the lines of you would be doing, Dane.
Yeah, I wouldn't work in a prison.
Okay, good to know. You're good. But you see, like... You see a hand holding the mirror, and it's Sam's hand, and you can see him watching these people. And then it pans back, so you can see the gate that Sam is behind, standing there with the broken scissors in either hand, just waiting for them to get closer. And like that was one of the creepier moments for me. Not necessarily looking at the demon, because I almost expected a demon.
Oh yeah,
but just seeing Sam in the shadows with dual wielding these scissors.
Well, in the first panel of the guard and the network engineer walking towards the cell, you don't see anything but darkness. And then the next panel, they move a little bit further forward, and then that's when you see him, and it's just his head and his hands, and you're like, oh, shit's about to go down.
Yeah. So Sam stabs the guard in the neck and the eye at the same time. Instant death. He grabs the car key, lets himself out, grabs the gun, and shoots the network guy. Meanwhile, Kinsey, we're on that path of discovery that Kinsey is going through, where she's trying to be not as much of a sore thumb and trying to blend in, and inevitably she's making friends, as some kids want to do. Like, they're gonna be nice to you, and she denies wanting to hang out with this person. She talks about how Tyler's dealing. She talks about how Bode is dealing. Bode even tries to show her the dead door, or the ghost door. And it's like, all right, this is fucking weird.
I know. She's like, I'm not going to try it. I'm not going to try it.
That was my favorite. It was just like, I don't care. This is stupid. Bye. And then the next one, like, wait, Bode. Okay, now you're freaking me out. Don't like this anymore.
It's not funny.
And my thought on that was, Kinsey, just walk through the door.
Yeah.
Even if it's just to placate him.
Amuse him, right? Like, play the game. Or don't even, like, walk through the door. Just go up to the door and, like, pretend to fall down like he did.
Right.
Play with your child, your child, right? Like,
play with your brother.
Yeah. And then, as she's just about to reach out beyond the door, Bode wakes up, and he goes, something's wrong, something terrible happened, he's telling Mom about it now, the one whose name means born at night. And you're like, what the fuck? And then the next thing that you see is Kinsey like, hey, Bode's being, what's going on? And you see a detective, very well shot. You see the badge, you see the gun holster on the ribs.
The shoulder.
Yeah, the shoulder holster, thank you. And Nina is talking to them. And so she listens in, finds out that Sam has broken out. But oftentimes when someone breaks out of prison, they're caught within the first 48 hours. They don't make it that far. And then the next thing that we see is Sam is in a cow truck in Wyoming already from California. And you're like, shit.
Damn it.
He's crafty. So they confront, and Kinsey and Nina are talking. They embrace. They're like, what are we going to do? Well, there's always going to be a police guy at the front of the house making sure that we're going to be safe until they capture him again.
And it's interesting, too, because if you read into that, Nina actually really does know her children exceedingly well.
Yeah.
Because she knew that Kinsey would be listening.
Yeah.
She says, how much of that did you catch?
Enough.
And she's like, okay, yeah, I knew you were listening.
Yeah. So, and it's good parenting. Like, you never got the sense that they were bad parents.
Yeah.
Well, except when you think back to when that memory of Dad and Mom stumbling home drunk. They didn't know that Tyler was listening in. But flash forward, and she automatically knows that Kinsey is.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where she didn't expect it from Tyler because Tyler had a bad relationship with Dad. Thought he didn't care about that. But even though, say, for example, I had a bad relationship with my dad, I still listened. It's the same thing with Tyler. He still listened. It's just he doesn't put forth that effort to show that I was listening.
Yeah.
But Kinsey.
Cards at the table.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we go through that discovery. Kinsey trying to stay hidden, And we get a really good good moment of good character writing, a good character flaw almost. And she walks by a bunch of painters painting a hallway and immediately makes her sick.
Yeah.
Which is a great way, in my opinion, of making these characters human at the same time that something fantastical is going to happen. Bringing them down to earth and giving them, if X, then Y, right? If then where... If they smell paint, it's going to draw back that memory. Mm-hmm. It's very clear that Joe Hill is making these characters three-dimensional, right?
Well, and he knows that smell is very, very closely attributed to memory.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all have that memory of anytime we hit a certain smell, it brings us back to something. For me, it's old books. I remember sitting on the ground in my dad's room where he had probably a 15-foot long wall, stacked halfway to the ceiling with books, the entire thing. And I just remember sitting there looking at all these books, flipping through the pages and smelling the old pages. And it's just that automatic memory.
Totally.
It's the same thing with Kinsey. She smells paint and it's that automatic memory.
Yeah. So she throws up out of a window, which happens to be the track coach's office. Clearly a very nice school because the track coach has her own office, right? How often does the track coach get her own office?
Well, I'm assuming she also teaches other things, just because that is
You're
standard
right.
procedure.
She does teach driver's ed. I'm sorry, I'm salty about most sports teachers.
I understand.
Yeah,
I get it.
That makes two of us, but we won't go there.
There's a good Family Guy coach where it's like, oh, I'm the coach of the basketball team. Yeah, what do you teach? Driver's ed? No, wood shop. That was my second guess.
Holds up his hands and he's missing a couple of fingers.
So the coach and Kinsey have a good conversation, and we kind of get the first real look at her bracelet. And this is when I heard Kaylin go, "Oh, come on! Really? You gave her a key? Come on!"
It's like, that's just so tropey, and that's the first thing. Of course, one of your children has the key on them at all times. Really?
Well, and the worst part of it is the coach sees the bracelet and she says, "Oh, is that a key?"
I know!
This is the first time where I look at it and I'm going, okay, Joe, you've done so good at just leading us to it subtly. This is way too over the head for you right now.
Which, in his defense, that's still, in the grand scheme of things, for somebody who's not an avid reader, probably wouldn't notice that quite as obviously. And so he just wanted to make sure that it was there and ready for anybody who came along.
Right.
But it definitely felt too much.
I mean, it's a Chekhov's gun situation.
Exactly.
But instead of waiting 2 pages for it to be addressed, somebody just automatically addresses it saying, "Oh, your bracelet. Yeah, is that a key?" It's like, come on. Give it a little bit of time, a little bit of subtlety.
Now, I'll be in the defense of Joe Hill here, right? Like, looking at it, it definitely looking at the bracelet, it looks like a key. So I can almost understand, like, the breakdown of like, oh, that looks like a key on your bracelet. What an interesting thing. I totally understand where you guys are coming from. And sometimes, for the not-so-smart readers, they need to be handed a few things every now and again. Stop looking at me, you asshats. Yeah, so it is tropey. It is on the nose. It's very obvious. It is what it is. And it's very clearly like, hey, I'm not going to dangle it in front of you. I'm going to hit you in the head with it. And I like what she says. Yeah, he said it was like a reminder. Believing in yourself is the key to being a complete person. If you've got the key, it can unlock any door and take you wherever you want to go, yada, yada, yada.
That's where it got really bad for me.
I was like, oh. All right.
David's over there going, subtle.
Yeah. Now
and the rest of us are just like, really? David, subtle.
And this is one of those moments where we like learn that there's more history, because you see Rendell as a teenager hanging out with the Lovecraft Senior Drama Group in their costumes for The Tempest, which is one of my favorite Shakespeare plays.
And it's interesting because it doesn't actually show that until Kinsey leaves and the coach is like, Coach walks over, grabs her yearbook and flips to that page as if she automatically knew exactly which page it was on.
Yeah.
And she just stares at it.
Yeah.
And we even see, like, from left to right, Mark Cho, Lucas Caravaggio, Ellie Whedon, which is the track coach, Rendell Locke, Kim Topher, and Aaron Voss, with Professor Joe Ridgway. So it's very clear, like, ooh, there's history here already.
Yeah.
And this is one of those moments of, like, I can't wait for these flashbacks. I want more.
And having you... Okay, so this was one of those really subtle things, which... I'm not going to ruin it, but having you read those names, I'm like, son of a bitch, why didn't I read the names?
It makes so much sense. And it highlights Lucas Caravaggio eyeing the bracelet that Rendell is wearing. He's not looking at the camera. He's not looking at anybody else. His eye line is straight at the bracelet with the key.
Again, that's why I was, son of a bitch.
So it goes back into Kinsey kind of trying to rediscover herself and her healthily going, okay, we've tried this way. I'm going to try and continue being me and just moving on with my life as best as I can, allowing other people in. Great moment. Loved it. This was like, yes, you are the most healthy character, and that is sad to say.
And it's funny because before she comes to that point of acceptance, you actually see that she's not accepting herself is causing her to have some form of body dysmorphia. I mean, she sees herself in all of these mirrors and she says it doesn't look right.
Yeah.
But then when she looks at herself in the car window, it's this really exaggerated, almost like a funhouse mirror.
Yeah.
But then when she goes home and decides, you know what, to hell with it, I'm going to be myself. That's when she looks at herself in the mirror and it's Kinsey.
Yeah.
And I mean, going into what occurs next when she goes to her friend's house, and it shows her track mate, the one who asked her to go running, walking down the stairs, and you see knock, knock, knock. And when I hit this point, it reminded me of the TV series The IT Crowd.
Okay.
Where Richard Ayoade, the guy who plays Moss, says, a closed door is a happy door. I'm like, this is horror. Don't open the fucking door.
It's Locke and Key. Something happens. There's a key. There's a door. Keep it closed.
So the door opens and it's Kinsey, and I was like,
oh.
Thank God.
Yes. I second that.
So that's the end of that issue. And it jumps into... The next issue jumps into Bode having these dreams again. He sees the body bag of his father, the very grotesque gunshot wound, and he's asking a knock-knock joke. Knock-knock. Who's there? Who? Who? And he always wakes up at that time, like just before the punchline is delivered. So it's driving him crazy because he doesn't understand what it is. Meanwhile, in Ohio, truckers getting head from Sam Lesser. And you're like, oh...
Cash, grass, or ass.
Yeah.
I said that exact same thing. I was like, so Lesser's providing the ass part of ass, grasser, gas. But, I mean, if you go back to Bode's dream, when he wakes up, the trucks that he had in the dream are in his hand. My first thought is this some sort of foreshadowing, or is Bode like some sort of freaky Freddy Krueger dream warrior kind of kid where he can pull Freddy Krueger out of his dreams?
Yeah.
Because he wakes up and he's holding both of those trucks. I was like, oh, maybe it's not just the house that has abilities.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair.
That.
Never mind. Can't talk about that.
Spoilers.
Can't talk about that. So yeah, next shot, it almost feels very movie-esque in the way that we see the truck highlighted in his hand, and then the exact same imagery is presented with a full life truck in movement. Very, very movie-esque, and it's very well depicted. Damn, you could teach a fucking seminar, and I'd like to have my wife attend. Well, that'd be awkward, says Sam Lesser. It's like, let's add awkward humor in here. Yeah.
It's just one of those things where it's like, okay, I understand that Sam is doing what he has to, but...
It's very much there just to make you uncomfortable, especially because Sam is 17, and so you have all of the issues of statutory rape and all that stuff on top of it. But like, this is already really dark. We might as well go there, too.
And it's also like showing the desperate attitude that Sam is at. Like, he doesn't care. Like, he doesn't look grossed out when he's done this. He's just, this is what I have to do. And that's kind of that disgusting drive that he has. It's not the, I would kill for this. It is the, I have killed and I'll fucking kill again. And it's grotesque.
He's probably been through worse, just like when you see more about his family and where he's come through, where he's come from thus far. Like, this is probably nothing in the grand scheme of all that he has done.
Yeah.
Oh, and I love the fact that it does show flashbacks of his family.
Yeah.
And you see him and he's talking about his family and how his family, you know, they were okay. They weren't that bad.
He's busy all the time.
Yeah, his mom is sitting there talking on the phone, smoking a cigarette, while his little brother's in the high chair with a can of tomato sauce to eat.
Yeah.
He's just covered in tomato sauce. Just, it's like, okay. She is definitely not mom of the year.
Yeah. No.
Remember when you said if I got 600s on my SAT, we could talk about college? Her response is, yeah, and if we win the lottery, I'm going out tonight. You and the baby are staying at your dad's. And then the next thing you see is his dad beating him, saying, "You telling stories about me? You making it sound like I'm the bad guy?" Yeah. And then being picked on in by the jock in the locker room. And it's like, these are the moments that, like, I could almost relate to this character. Like, I can see this transformation of this good kid trying so fucking hard and then reacting out. And we know that, so he has the jock picking on him and he bites the jock and draws blood. And I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, you have some dick coming up to you. You've been pushed to the last straw. You should be able to react in these moments. And yes, there should be consequences, but there should be consequences to both sides, in my opinion. So the jock should get some sort of punishment, and so should Sam in this moment. But we should also be able to see Sam being this really good kid, having this moment of a breakdown. And that's when that's when Rendell, the school counselor, should be able to step in and go, listen, you're a great kid. You need support. Let's do this. Let's do that. And we see him try, but he just doesn't push as hard as I think he should. Now, that could be public education system. That could be the fact that he doesn't truly understand what's going on at home. Myriad of things of why Rendell did not push as hard as he did.
Well, going back to our previous podcast guest, Darren.
Yeah.
He's a former teacher. The reason he is no longer a teacher is because there was a boy, a 6th grade boy, picking on a 3rd grade girl.
Oh, shit.
And it gets even worse because the 3rd grade girl was a Muslim girl wearing a hijab. So he starts spouting off all of this really racist bullshit, starts punching this girl. And Darren stepped in, grabbed the boy, and pulled him off.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, of course, in this day and age, every kid has a cell phone. Every cell phone has a camera. It's been videoed.
Yeah.
Where all he does is grab the kid and pull him off and say, "Hey, back off," and he gets fired for it because he overstepped his bounds. Because the school didn't want his parents suing, so they fired Darren.
Yeah.
So that's where I could see where Rendell would not be pushing as hard as he possibly can, because he's trying to protect himself while still doing as much as he possibly can.
There's only so much you can do in those circumstances.
Yeah. And it's heartbreaking because maybe this whole thing could have been avoided. This whole series. I feel like that's a crux of many stories of like, all of this could have been avoided if, like when we talked about Avengers versus X-Men, all of this could have been avoided if Charles had been more of the father figure to Scott.
Exactly.
You know, if Rendell could have sat down like, hey, let's talk. Let's talk every day for the next week after this incident where you bit the jock's arm. Let's talk once a week after a week of this. And then let's figure out what else we can do here, right? And you're absolutely right. Like, there's limitations that we may not be aware of. And at the same time, like, it breaks my heart. Because I honestly, I was this kid picked on. I was the kid trying my hardest, taking care of my younger siblings, trying to keep my grades up. He did a lot better at his grades than I did mine. It was a miracle I walked out with a 3.5 in high school. But it's one of those things that, like, I see this character and I feel for them so truly. And I remember when I acted out on somebody. I was picked on in at this kid on the bus. His name was Nathan. And I remember he just got in my face for the last time. And I took my violin case and I rammed it into his testicles. And I felt so good about it. And the bus driver was like, I'm going to have to report this. You recognize that? And I was like, yeah, I recognize that. Okay, I'll report it on the last day of school. Get back to your seat. And I was like...
You're like, hell yeah.
Okay. And so, like, the bus driver just knew that this kid was picking on me and picking on me and picking on me. So there was this understanding of, like, there is going to be consequence. And I'm also on your side because I understand you're a kid and you're done. So I felt very relatable to this in this moment to Sam Lesser.
And, this is actually going all the way back to episode 1, shared childhood sadness.
We have a theme in this series, babe. I don't know if you know that yet. We got shit to deal with.
Who knew that some comic book nerds got picked on in school?
Never would have guessed.
Because I also related to Sam.
Yeah.
I mean, the one time that I got suspended, I had a group of what I thought were friends, which in retrospect, looking back, I'm going, wow, these guys were assholes and they did not like me. Because one of the friends who was the alpha of the group, I remember one time we were playing, I was on the swing, I jumped off, I landed as if I'd been thrown, and I was like, oh, ow, I'm hurt, and he comes walking over to me and kicks me in the face. Full on, just
awesome.
Foot straight to the nose. And I just reacted. I got so mad, I grabbed his leg as he was walking away, and I sank my teeth into the back of his leg, into his Achilles tendon, and I just see him go down. And a couple weeks later, after the bruising on his tendon had gone away and he was able to run again, he gathered the rest of the group and decided, okay, we're playing a new game. It's called Lynch Mob. He's the person we're going to lynch. And I'm just like, oh, fuck. And there's 15 kids that start chasing after me.
Yeah.
Luckily, I was the fastest kid in our grade. Because of those presidential fitness days, I found out I was the fastest, so I start running. Find this rock on the ground, and it happens to be about 30 feet away from our classroom door. And this group is coming after me. I've got enough of a lead. I decide I bend down, pick up the rock, and I start brandishing it, never intending to actually hit anyone with it. But my teacher walks out. And the only thing she sees is this kid with his arm cocked back, huge rock in his hand, and one kid come to a complete stop, hands up, and the rest of the group disperses. And she says, Dane, take that rock down to the principal's office. I'm like, and she says, no, I'm calling the principal right now. I'm like, but I was defending myself. So I was not smart, though. No. I had not thought about it because she did not have anybody escort me to the office. So I'm walking to the office, still have the rock in my hand, and I'm going, looking back at it, I'm like, I should have thrown the fucking rock into the bush. But I make it in.
Gaslight the teacher.
Right? I make it into the office. And the principal is there, and she says, okay, well, seeing as you nearly murdered, I was like, wait, I never intended.
Murder?
Oh, and it gets so much worse because she had her desk drawer partially open and she kept her hand in the drawer the entire time.
Oh, shit.
And so she had to leave the office. So she leaves the office for about 4 minutes. I stand up and I lean over and she has a fucking revolver in her desk pointed where I'm sitting. And I'm just like,
that's so unnecessary.
Okay. All right. And she comes back in, sits down, her hand does not go into her drawer. And I'm thinking, thank God. And she says, okay, for the rest of the day, you'll be receiving in-school suspension. After that, you'll be suspended for the next 3 days. I'm like, okay, I'm good with that. I'm really good. My dad overreacted.
Yeah.
Locked me in my room for 3 weeks. I was only able to go to school, come back, and he took everything out.
Of course.
But looking at the comic again, where you see Sam sitting out front of Rendell's office, he's talking to the guy that goes with him. The guy's picking his nose, obviously not intelligent.
Yeah.
But then it moves on to the next panel, onto the next page, and Tyler is walking out of Rendell's office. Yeah. And this is another reason why I think Rendell didn't push as far as he could, because he's dealing with Tyler, trying to be the father figure to Tyler, so he can't be Sam's father figure as well.
Yeah.
He's got way too much on his plate with Tyler.
I like that. I like that a lot. And we even see, like, Tyler is dealing with this, and he even gets this suicidal thought in his head where he says, enough, enough, enough. And you see him eyeing a double-barreled shotgun on the top shelf. And he breaks down, he's crying, and that's when Bode comes in. And he says, stop it, you self-pitying asshole. Bode's looking at you. So this is that family trying to, like, no, you don't show your emotions. You're strong. And that it made me mad when I read it the first time. And it made me mad again, where I'm just like, strength is not stoic. These things do not equal each other necessarily. Being able to show I am crying, I am sad, and I'm hurt could have been the most rewarding thing to both Ty and Bode and their relationship, right?
And it's interesting, too, because when you actually look at that panel where he's looking at what you're assuming is the shotgun, it's not just a shotgun. It's a pair of hedge clippers, which look almost exactly like the scissors that Bode gave to the Echo. And there's also a hatchet.
Yeah.
So it's really coming back to Bode feeling guilty about his dad.
Tyler,
yes. Tyler.
Not just me.
That's right. Now we're both one, so now you're next.
Dun, dun, dun.
So it's kind of a subconscious thing where Tyler keeps seeing all of these things that are attributed to either his dad's death or his mom's assault.
And so Bode comes up and he tries to ask the knock-knock joke. And so he, who, and he goes, oh, the rest of the joke, it's what are you, some kind of owl, right? And he goes, that's it? That doesn't mean anything. No shit. So Bode walks off, and Ty has a moment of like, I had enough. I'm kind of done. I need to move on. He eyes the shotgun again. He recognized that was a moment of weakness, and he's going to try and be better.
I love the line about, like, someone needs to be around to answer this kid's questions.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
He needs someone to pretend life can be like it was.
Yeah.
And if I can fake it with the best of them, it's just hard. It's hard without you, Dad. I didn't really want you to die. Not ever. No matter what I said to him. And that leads... Yeah. This is going to lead into that, like, moment of Sam Lesser talking with Ty and, like, you should kill him, right? So it's a good, like, little bit of a cliffhanger on the character.
And this was a God Country moment for me, because I'm reading this at work, and I'm just like...
Oh, gosh.
And it's so terrible, because I'm in the construction field, so... Luckily, I had tinted safety glasses on, so I'm just kind of like, okay, all right, I'm good. And my friend comes walking up to me. He's like, Dane, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I got something in my eye.
I have feelings in my eye. Don't worry about it.
I was wondering if that ever worked.
With tinted glasses, it works.
On a construction site, sure.
Right? So I got away with it, but at the same time, he knows me well enough. He's like, something's wrong.
Yeah. So we flash back over to Sam. He's in the truck with the creepy trucker dude, and the trucker's like, hey, I got some friends. You need money. You can't go anywhere without money these days. Then it flashes back to Sam talking to Rendell, and it kind of gives us that, yeah, he did talk about the house in the summer cabin. It wasn't just the lady in the well. Yeah.
And there's actually a photo of the cabin.
Yeah, the photo of the cabin. And then the next thing that he sees is a drawing or a painting of the well house.
Oh my god, that painting though. Or drawing or whatever it is, that depiction of the well house freaked me the fuck up.
Was it the depiction or was it
the way it kept changing?
The moment of seeing the lady in the well, drawing out "help me,"
and then the words,
and then listen to the echoes, and he's kind of just. He's done. Like, Sam is checked out. He's not caring anymore.
Yeah.
He's given some really bad news, and he's just enthralled with this woman who's asking for help in this magic means.
And this was one of those situations where I saw that painting, and I was like, oh, God, I am way too much of a nerd. And the reason I say that is because I actually wrote a note saying the painting is like a weeping angel. The image of an angel isn't in and of itself an angel. So I was just like, oh man, I have watched way too much Doctor Who.
That just makes it better.
Fucking nerd.
But it really is that, because the picture of the well in and of itself is a portal to the well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Filming the angel makes the film an angel.
Yep.
Totally. So we flash forward to now. He's heard some bad news. Ty says, "If you kill somebody, kill my dad. Let me know." And then the next thing that you see is Sam jumping onto a bus, and a tire iron through the trucker's face, through the steering wheel. Like, very clearly, this was a thrashing, and it's almost kind of like a vindictive, evil sort of like victory.
You made me do what you made me do, and now you're making me do it again.
Yeah, and like, I there's this moment of like, fuck yeah, wait, no,
honey, no.
So he gets on a bus with a couple different passengers,
and looking at the bus, I'm actually looking at the page right now, and the passengers, the one on the left-hand side, I saw him, and my first thought was, oh, look, Kid Omega's on the bus.
It definitely does. Pink hair, the eyebrow piercing, and everything. So they go into the cell. We go into the cellar with Uncle Duncan, Kinsey, and Bode. They're like, oh, yeah, look at all this wine. It's everywhere. And Bode's like, hey, let me tell you this knock-knock joke. And, what are you, an owl? And then the next panel is just them standing there in silence. As anyone who's dealt with a bad crowd before, of like, knock knock, who's there? Who? What are you, an owl? Thanks. Thanks, you guys.
See, we just gave you that same reaction.
You did, and it was beautiful. It's like we planned it or something.
Exactly what you wanted.
David, I'm sorry. Please don't cry.
No. Okay. And then Uncle Duncan gives like, oh, well, there's another side of the joke. What are you, my echo? And it's like, oh.
Yeah, it's like, oh, son of a...
Yeah. And it gives Bode a good moment of him thinking about, like, what do I need to think about this echo? What is this echo actually of? Whose echo is it? Meanwhile, Sam is on the bus. He figures he's been spotted, and he jumps back in time in his memory to him talking about how he needs the anywhere key. And for whatever reason, Rendell doesn't know what he's talking about. And you believe this earnestness of him, and he goes, I don't know what you're talking about, and wouldn't give you what you wanted, even if I did. I'm getting up now. If you're going to shoot me, you better get to it. What happens next is up to you. That counselor mentality of like, I'm giving you the option. You can walk away, right? Like, you can be the responsible adult that I know you can be. We kind of know how that ends. But the next panel, or the next page even, is... Sam dressed in the bus driver's clothing, gun in pocket, and the whole back of the bus is covered in gore.
It's a bloody mess.
Yeah. And it's a great, like, it's a smart thing, because you would pull over a bus driver if they didn't look like a bus driver, right? So very clear, like, he's being smart about it, and like, this kid is intelligent in the worst kind of way.
Well, and he's only got blood on the right side of his face, so... If you happen to be driving past and looked at him, you wouldn't see that blood speck on his face. But it's also interesting because when he's pulling the gun out of his jacket, there is actually a small one-page interlude between where he pulls the gun out of his jacket and where it shows him as the bus driver.
Yeah.
And it's before. It's the going back.
After.
Yeah. It's going back to him holding the gun on Rendell.
Yeah. And like, it's just really beautifully done. It's really well shot. I really like it. And that ends out the issue. The next issue begins with the same bus parked at the pier and some fisherman trying to light his cigarette or his pipe or whatever. And then you see the bus catch on fire. And he looks over and goes, what the fuck? And you see Sam standing next to him. Isn't that something? Looks just like a movie. And like, this is just so blasé to him, right? At this point, like, his mind is just so far gone. That's all that it is it's just looks like a movie. Huh. Would have never have thought it looked that real.
Well, at this point, you'd be totally desensitized to most fantastic things.
Yeah, totally. You have this magic well lady talking to you from your toilet.
Randomly giving you scissors and a mirror. And
giving you a means of escape.
And you've seen...
killing so many people around
you've seen death in its truest forms. And he pulls the gun on the fisherman and it's like, oh, I hear some sirens. We should probably get going to the other side of the Lovecraft. And this is when Bode is confronting the Echo. And he goes, listen, if you were my Echo, you'd be more like me. You'd sound like me. You'd talk like me. You would be me. So I don't think I'm going to talk to you anymore because this just doesn't seem right. And then he's talking, and then the Echo doesn't respond until he starts hearing his Echo again. And this is a great...
This was the freakiest panel in this entire book.
This is a great moment where someone's like, Bode, come inside. It's Kinsey. It's like, okay, I'm down here. All right, I'll be there in a minute. And you see the Lady of the Well just reaching out for him and just climbing out covered in shadow. Again, listening to Kaylin read this, I hear, whoa! I was like, what happened? Tell me everything. It's the lady and she's coming out of the well. Yes! Yes, this is so good!
Well, in those 2 pages where it shows Bode sitting there with a flashlight, he's clicking the flashlight on and off, and he's got a jar with a firefly in it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because if you look at it, every time the flashlight is off, the firefly is illuminated. But every time he turns the flashlight on, the firefly deluminates.
Yeah.
So it's almost a symbol of there's always at least a small bit of light in the darkness.
Yeah. So Sam is getting to the island, shoots the fisherman, lights the boat on fire. We see a really interesting moment that we don't see much of with Tyler anymore. He's watching the news. He's seeing all these dark things. Synagogue vandalized with a swastika, war on terror. Somebody's beaten at a public rally. And the entire time, he has a lighter. He lights it, runs his hand over it, and then, like, closes on the fire, right? Like, one of the common traits of someone dealing with trauma or some sort of pain is them and their self-flagellation, oftentimes, of, like, hurting themselves and this masochism.
It's causing a physical pain to try and work through an emotional pain faster. It's basically just causing yourself pain to move through it. And it never really works.
Yeah. No.
It's something that every person subconsciously has. Whether or not they act on it is completely different.
Totally. And it could look in many different forms, too. It could be lighting your hand on fire. It could be self-harm in the form of cutting yourself. It could even be biting your lip to the point where it bleeds, like Kinsey did. Speaking of Kinsey, we see Kinsey making nice with the police officer that's assigned out front, and they're clearly, like, getting along. They've been talking quite a bit. The mom is, like, making sure he gets, pretty nice food every now and again.
Well, the uncle.
The uncle, excuse me, yeah.
Duncan's the cook,
yeah. He makes the assumption that it's the mother.
Yeah.
And so they're talking about the fireflies, and it's like, oh, I'm collecting them for Bode. Bode's really interested. Okay, well, don't worry about it. I have this house under Lock and Key. They'd have to swim 1,000 miles almost to get to the back of the house, so we're not too worried about that area. And we already know that at this point, Sam is on the island. Right?
And the cop even flat out says, it's not like anything is going to happen to the little guy in his own backyard.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the next panel you see is the lady in the well holding her hand over Bode's face while holding a finger to her lips as if to say shush.
So good. Love these moments where you understand that there is intensity in it. And these are the moments where I really love reading on a computer instead of reading on a book sometimes, because even like trying to like not spoil it for yourself, you're reading, but you see that right page every single time. You look down, you may not read the context, but you see something else is happening. This is the moment where you click the next page, and then you see it, and you're like, oh gosh. It truly has the opportunity to surprise you, and it's so well done.
Growing up, I was the guy who was like, oh, I'll only ever read comics on physical format.
Yeah.
But now that I've been reading them on a digital format, it's exactly that. I'm like, oh, man, it does give you that sense of surprise on every single page.
Yeah. And now we have a true confrontation between Bode and the lady in the well, the Echo. And she admits that she, like, I never said that I couldn't get out of the well. I just said I couldn't climb out of the well. And I still can't walk through the door. I wouldn't exist anymore if I did that. So I'm going to tell you what. An old friend of ours, Sam, is going to be here. You can save them, save your family, if you find me the Anywhere key. If you find that key, you're all set. Don't worry about it. I'll keep everybody safe. And at the end, like, Bode is in tears. He's upset. He feels betrayed. The one person who understood him was using him, and Bode understands that at this point. And he goes, you knew some things about my dad, so I figured if you really are an Echo, you must be an Echo of someone who knew him. So, like, even Bode's putting two and two together at this point. And I feel like this is a good hand-holding for the audience. It's not as tropey, whereas...
oh, look, a key!
Well, it's not even just the, oh, look, it's a key. There's the trope that I can't stand, where it's the expositional dialogue from somebody who's in universe to explain to the character, but also the audience, of like, Sonic blasting, what is that? And then in universe character goes, oh, well, Sonic blasting is da 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 da. You know, that expositional dialogue is just so much better done here in this instance.
I mean, it's like Ocean's 11. I love that movie, but it's where George Clooney and Brad Pitt are explaining the whole heist to each other after it's already happened. It's
unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead and just show us, have it as a flashback, show us that it happened, but you don't need to explain it.
It's that moment where, you know, he where the casino owner, like, looks at the fake dollar bills and, like, he puts two and two together. And then that's when, like, you could even have George Clooney look at the bad guy, and they kind of, like, have an understanding, and it could flash back into that, and it could look so much cooler. But it's that great moment of, like, I just wanted to know who. And my names are Legion, Bode, but I'll tell you what, in a place called Once Upon a Time, your daddy would have done anything to make me happy. And before tonight's over, you're gonna feel the same way.
So that's where I'm like, okay, maybe I'm gonna keep reading this thing.
Really?
Because that is so intriguing to me.
Yeah, just this idea of, like, I can make anybody eat out of the palm of my own hand.
Yeah, no, I'm into that.
Yeah, you're into that?
Well, and the fact that this creature says my names are
Legion in particular, yeah.
The name Legion, when it refers to a being, typically is a demon.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm just like, oh, okay, this is going to get more intense. I need to read volume 2.
So Kinsey's looking around. She sees someone with a flashlight, and it's like, hey, Bode, I called you forever ago. We need to go inside. And then Kinsey gets hit in the face with a flashlight, and it's Sam, and he beats her mercilessly. Almost a callback, if you will, to his own violence acted upon him.
Very much so.
But it's against somebody that he feels he can actually perpetuate that violence against, because Tyler's the one who did it to him.
Yeah.
Tyler's obviously bigger and stronger.
Yeah.
And Sam, while not necessarily bigger and stronger and not necessarily better than Kinsey, has that ingrained male machismo where he's like, oh, I'm a guy, I can beat the crap out of her and she's not going to do anything.
He just knows she's going to be an easy target that he can exert control over.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is
something he's lacked his entire life.
Yeah.
Which kind of goes back to just all of the violence and everything he's been perpetuating up to this point. he's finally in a place of control.
Yeah.
Which is kind of terrifying.
The fact that this is the ideal of control
Yeah.
is that's the terrifying point of like
problematic.
Totally.
Yeah.
And like I think it's putting a good light on it in a sense of like this is the extreme, but this is the same as that problematic ideal of like if you're in control and your control is hurting people, that's not good, right? But it's putting a light where you can see how toxic and how terrible this actually is.
Obviously, very much so.
Yeah. So he drags Kinsey's body to the basement where Nina and Duncan are looking at wine, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I can find wine wherever I want." The alcoholic defense, where it's like, I just want to hide all my feelings at the bottom of the bottle, right? And Duncan locks them in, and Nina's freaking out, trying to break out, right? And Tyler hears the commotion a little bit, tries to go and investigate, and sees Sam with a gun drawn on him. And he's like, all right, let's go downstairs. And this is like one of his revenge moments where he kicks Duncan off the rails into the basement, crashing through wood, and just kind of beats the crap out of him a little bit. And he says, okay, I've got a gun to your son's head, Mrs. Locke. You need to tell me where the anywhere key is.
You said Duncan, not Tyler.
Son of a bitch! I'm so glad that this isn't like the D&D podcast that I do, because then it's like, all right, we gotta do this all over again, or else it's not gonna make any sense. Thank you for calling me out.
You're welcome.
So, all the while, the Echo is talking to Bode, says, all right, go find this thing. I can make sure that your family's safe, but you gotta go find this thing. And she sends him on his way. He knocks over the glass that was containing the Firefly, and the Echo Legion is, all right, fly away as she's playing with the lightning bug. And this brings us to the final issue in the into the Locke and Key first volume. Welcome to Lovecraft, I think it's called.
Yes, that's what the first volume is called.
Welcome to Lovecraft. So tell me where the key is, and I'll let your family go. And she goes, I don't know what you're talking about. She goes, wait, yes. Tyler knows where the key is. It's up in my room. I think I know what you're talking about. It's up in my room. Tyler can show you. And what we don't know is, or I think what we do know, is that previously they talked about if something happens, there is a loaded gun in my room. I think that was when Kinsey and Nina were talking.
That's
yeah,
correct.
she flat out tells Kinsey, she said she has a plan if something does happen.
Yeah. So there's that, and Nina even mentions that after a few moments to make sure, like, hey, he knows where the gun is. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Bode runs in, uses the dead door, because he knows if he thinks hard enough, it will take him to the person or thing that he needs to find. So think about the anywhere key. Think. And it takes him to Kinsey. And because if it wasn't, handed to you on a silver plate before, now you can draw 2 and 2 together. Mm-hmm. For, the less educated readers.
Well, in the first page of this issue, if you go back to it, and it shows, of course, Sam holding the gun on Tyler, and it shows Kinsey in the bottom left-hand corner, unconscious. Again, really smart usage of color to draw the eye.
Yeah.
Because Kinsey is wearing red, and she's got this gold bracelet against a slate gray floor.
Yeah.
So your eyes kind of drawn to the bracelet too, subconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
So I took a design marketing class of like how you design logos and whatnot, and how you take pictures, things along those lines. And this is one of those moments where like you see the lines drawing your eye down, and then you could even follow it to the gun to Tyler's head, and his chin leads down to his knees. And his knees even point in that direction towards the bracelet. So it's all it's pointed. Even if you were to look somewhere else, it draws you in different directions back towards the bracelet. The broken piece of wood on the far right of the panel points. Like everything is literally pointing to this item. So if you didn't see it beforehand, you have to see it now. So Sam is escorting Tyler through the house. Bode is trying to figure out what's going on, and he realizes it keeps taking him back to Kinsey, and he looks closer and he sees the key in the bracelet. So he runs. He's going to run downstairs. While Sam and Tyler are walking through the house. And what was it that he said? There was something that oh yeah, he actually says, like, no, Tyler, I came to see him to get the keys, but I killed him because you asked me to. I told him that too, right before I shot him, that you asked me to kill him. You should have seen his face.
And this is where the sociopath really shows in Sam, because he says, you should have seen his face when I told him that you're the one who said kill him.
Yeah.
Kill him.
So Bode runs downstairs. He grabs the bracelet. I hope you're all right, but he doesn't even check on her. And Nina hears Bode. Bode, is that you? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Can you let us out? He took the key. Run and get help. I will. I'm going to get help right now. And we know where he's going. He's going back to the Legion, right? Cut back to Tyler in their mother's bedroom, and he's looking around, and there's a moment where he goes, my friend Al said your mother used to flash her panties at him when she dropped her car off at the car wash where he worked. I wonder if he made that up. This is pretty boring underwear, not like the stuff Al described at all. And it's like, yeah, of course your friend was a liar. Like,
yeah,
of course, like, when you're that alone, of course you're going to make up the most ridiculous things to be believed, right?
Well, and then also thinking about this and him talking about the underwear does go back to the fact that Al did
rape.
Yeah, he did flat out rape Nina.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole buckling of the pants, saying, "Oh yeah, this is what her panties looked like." You're just like, "Oh fuck, okay, it's gone back to uncomfortable again."
Yeah, that truthful pain that we would experience in these moments. And he sees in the mirror that Tyler is reaching into the drawer where the gun is, and he grabs it and he goes, "Oh, you know, it's funny because this gun was empty." Meanwhile, Tyler runs out the room real quick, trying to get the drop on him, and Tyler accidentally going through the dead door.
Unlocks it first,
goes through the dead door while being choked by Sam. And it's a great moment because it forces Tyler to go like, oh shit, I'm dead. And it's a good excuse for him to not believe. Because like in the Dresden Files that we were talking about, they commonly point to the fact that humans see it all the time. They just make excuses for it.
Their brain automatically tries to defend itself by creating these fantasies.
Yeah. Or they over-explain it with logic that doesn't actually make any sense. So this is that moment where Tyler can go, oh, he choked me to the point where I lost consciousness. So I had an out-of-body experience.
Well, and it's interesting, too, looking at it, because Sam is on top of Tyler choking him. And you see the fact that it's just the top of Tyler's head that went through the door. But Sam never went through the doorway.
Yeah.
So if Sam had gone through the doorway, would he have been...
Oh, totally. Yeah, I think so. So Bode runs back to the lake house, and the Legion goes, "Oh, that's clever, but you wouldn't understand anything that's really going on here. You're a little guy, Bode. Kids always think they're coming into a story at the beginning when usually they're coming in at the end, and so it's very clear like this person, Legion, has been planning for so long, and there are so many plans to come to fruition. And thinking about what's coming next in the few series, in the end of the volumes, where you're like, oh, and like you see the machinations that they put into place. It's not Machiavellian, and it's not a Rube Goldberg machine, but it's clever and it's smart and it's pinpointed and it's accurate and very demon-esque, as you have said multiple times now.
Yeah. Well, and it's also interesting because by Legion saying that kids always come in at the end of the story, we don't have any of the backstory on this creature. So we think that we're coming into the beginning of this story, whereas it's the end of this creature's story.
Yeah.
I mean, these volumes are going to be the end of this creature's story.
Yeah. And that's almost terrifying, because this could be like end of days kind of thing. We don't know the magnitude of how end this is, right?
Yeah.
So using the any key, Legion walks out into the lock house, uses the any key to magically transport into the lock house. Bode tries to follow, but it's too late. The magic has ended. And we see a little satchel. We've seen here and there this little leather purse on the neck of Legion. And inside she reaches and she grabs another key with 2 faces. One with the symbol for male and one for female. And she crawls into the closet, unlocks a door, and comes out the other side as a dude. I gotta find something else to wear, something that goes with balls. And it's like
That made me laugh.
that's a very macho man thing to do. So we don't know, like, is this person a male? Is this person a female? But we can even go back to the original picture where the guy was eyeing the bracelet, and it's like, oh.
And it's also interesting too when you actually look at the page where she comes into the house.
Mm-hmm.
That's obviously Kenzie's room.
Yeah.
Because it's got the Jamaican flag. It's got the Rastafarian and Bob Marley with the dreadlocks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then it moves into Tyler's room because you see the poster for San Francisco 49ers and 30 Days of Night, which awesome story, by the way. But it goes from a female room to a male room and transitions from female to male.
So I am going to spoil a little bit here. You find out how the keys are being made and whatnot later on in the series. And one of the people who can make the keys even, like, makes this key to help their sister because she does not feel right in her body. And it's just kind of this beautiful moment. And I wanted to put a little bit of a light to it. He goes, I wanted to help her. Well, I guess him now, because he really wanted to just feel at home for once. And I needed to point out just how great that kind of ideal is.
All the beautiful gender feels.
Yeah. And not only just gender feels, but gender support and love and acceptance. So I just wanted to take this terrible moment and highlight something really positive that was the original intention for it.
And it's interesting, too, when you actually think about it, because Locke and Key was written, let's see, when was it written?
2008.
Yeah, so actually quite some time before this whole gender equality movement really came to its strongest point. I mean, it was when it was starting to build and
gain its most volume, I would say. Because it's been going on for quite some time.
Right.
It just hasn't picked up that media outlet and controversy until probably these past few years.
Right.
So yeah, no, it's a good, I don't know, it's one of those things that you see moments in the character based on ideals that the author might have. Kind of like how Brian K. Vaughan puts these characters who are accepting and loving and wants that diversity. And Joe Hill very clearly wants to support people who want just to be comfortable and loved. So
Joe Hill actually, just reading this entire thing so far, has really come to the point where he says it's just emotion is important. And we all have to deal with emotion.
Yeah.
We can't just brush it into the wayside and try and go logic on everything.
Yeah.
Being a very logical person, it's difficult to...
I'm ignoring that pointed look.
It's difficult to actually look at emotion and see why it's logical.
Yeah.
But reading something like this helps point out that emotion is logical at more times than I care to admit.
Yeah, that's fair.
It has its place.
It has its place.
Purpose.
And there's a balance between the two, for sure. And one should go in hand with the other. Sometimes one will drive more often than the other, but we need to be able to make sure that we have that balance.
Right.
Totally. So while all of this is happening, the Echo is in the house in physical form, changed genders. Tyler is in ghost form, and he's like, I'm dead. What's Mom gonna think? What's Bode gonna think? And he, of course, is thinking about Mom, and that's how the door works, is if you think about something, you get taken to that place. So he sees Mom, and he's just heartbroken. He sees his body. He sees Sam bragging about how easy it was to kill him, and he remembers Bode talking about And when you're a ghost, you can fly around through the walls and go places just by thinking, and then you don't want to be dead anymore. You go back through the magic door, and you wake up inside your body. And he goes, oh shit. And so easily he just flies back through, and like even just the magic that's drawn, it looks like a little keyhole. It's just small little nods, something that's very clearly well done, and I love it. These are the parts that I eat up so much. Tyler wakes back up in his body. Sam's about to torture Kinsey for the key a little bit more, and that's when Tyler tackles Sam to the ground. It's this great triumphant fight with Kinsey grabbing the gun and shooting him a couple of times, in the neck even, as he tries to run away. And the siblings all hold on to each other. They're safe. They're comfortable. They're regrouping. Meanwhile, Sam is bleeding out through the neck and runs into Legion. And it's like, oh, it's you. And it's, I tried so hard. Sam, you did fine. You did your best. And then you see them grab Sam's neck and crack it, breaking it to the point, not to death, but it's kind of just paralysis, which is, from my understanding of all movies and TV shows, takes a skilled hand. Because if you break the neck, it can very quickly kill somebody.
Right. Working at a hospital, when your neck breaks, it's the spinal column, it's the spinal cord that is to be severed. But you put too much pressure on that, and what happens is it severs arteries and it severs your trachea. So you wouldn't be able to breathe, you would bleed out and die. So it does take just that right amount of torque to snap one without snapping the others.
Gotcha. So clearly, someone who's done this before.
Yeah.
Many times. And Legion is dragging Sam through an open door, and he goes, "You soon will be more powerful than you can ever imagine, and I still need you, Sam. I need you so much. Isn't that what you always wanted? Someone to need you." Leaning on that weak, leaning on someone who needs that support, someone to want you. It's just, they knew exactly how to play on Sam's emotions.
And he says, "I'm doing this because I loved you."
Yeah.
It's like, oh, man.
So many good signs of toxicity and abuse.
We're just gonna twist that knife right there.
Yeah, exactly. Let's jump into those feelings again. And he pushes Sam through the dead door and locks it and takes the key with him. So now we know, like, we logically understand the body is probably dead at this point, but the spirit's free to roam wherever. The detective runs back in. The police had heard the gunshots, and the next thing that we see is Legion ringing on the doorbell of the coach's house, and she's upset. "If you wake up my son, I swear to high heaven." Hello, Ellie. You look great. Mind if I come in? I mean, I killed your mother for you. It's really the least that you can do. It's like, oh gosh, oh no, oh gosh. So we're now dealing with aftermath. The police are there. They're trying to figure out what had happened. They even walk through the dead door, but with the wrong key.
Which is actually a very subtle hint that the key and the door aren't mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
You have to use both, except for the anywhere key.
Yeah.
The anywhere key, any door, unlock it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this house is very particular.
Very, very specific, and it knows what needs to happen. And even with the door open, Tyler looks at it and he's thinking, is Bode right? And he reaches out and he's hesitant. And his mother is like, "Hey, what are you looking at? You're doing okay? Nothing? I thought I saw something for a moment."
Well, and Duncan walks through it too.
Yeah, Duncan walks through it just fine.
He walks through it and he's looking around just going, "Okay, I don't really see anything."
Yeah.
So.
And he's like, "I'm wondering if I'm going crazy." "Nope. You're sticking around, Mama says. Sounds good to me." And in the next panel, we see this ghostly outline, and it's very clearly of Sam Lesser as a ghost who's now trapped here forever because he can't return to his dead body. Like, we don't know the rules of this magic. If he goes back through the door when it's activated, does he get to pass on? What happens from here? Like, there's a lot of questions that we can ask about Sam Lesser at this point.
Right. If he goes through the door and the body has started to decay, does he come back as a desiccated, reanimated corpse, or
Zombie murders.
So 2 weeks later has passed. They're all at the pool again, just outside the well house. They're kind of talking. Bode's kind of understanding the weight and the gravity, and Tyler's like, "Hey, this is Zach. He's new at the academy, just like us."
Boo!
And
Piss.
Immediately, it's Legion. It's short black hair. He's got a little soul patch, piercings. He looks like he's with the times and everything. Not somebody who's 40, 50 years old at this point, right? And clearly Kinsey is like, "Oh, hello, how you doing?"
And clearly Bode, when you look at him, he has that immediate,
Distrust.
okay, yeah, this seems oddly familiar.
Yeah.
I don't like this thing.
Yeah, does not pass the sniffer test, that's for sure.
No.
Welcome to Lovecraft. You guys want to head over to the beach? Oh, you had to twist my arm. Meanwhile, Bode, with his little magnetic fishing rod, finds a key with a head on it and kind of an anatomical drawing of a brain. And
the anatomical picture of the brain is what is considered the different areas of the brain, the logic, the memory.
Mm-hmm. And that is where it ends. So overall, giving it a rating from A to F. How would you rate it, Kaylin?
I'm giving it an A.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. The character development just through the volume was incredible. None of the characters... changing that. All of the characters had their own battles. They were all very well done. All of the dialogue fit for each character whenever it was delivered. There was no line that felt like it was just thrown out.
Mm-hmm.
The art was incredible across the board. My only complaint was hitting us over the head with the key, the anywhere key. Other than that, I have no criticism. I have no complaints.
Excited to read the next one?
Yes.
Good. Dane, where do you sit?
And I actually also sit at flat out A.
Yeah.
Just due to the fact that the artist and the author of this book worked so well together. Mm-hmm. They worked just hand in hand throughout the entire thing. The use of colors, the use of directionality, the use of subtlety, except for, like Kaylin was saying, the whole hitting you over the head with the anywhere key. It was just done so well, and it's so well paced that you keep reading it and you keep reading it and you're thinking to yourself, "Oh man, it's got to be towards the end," and you're going, "Oh, awesome! I still have 3 more issues to read." Mm-hmm. But I do enjoy it, and I do think that Joe Hill really does step out of his father's shadow on this one, because this is written much better than almost anything Stephen King that I've read.
It's very clearly not going to end with some sort of Deus Ex Machina or some like magical sex orgy like in It, right? Like
right.
That just there's those consistent bits where it's like, oh, well, it worked by itself, or oh, we all understood the magic because the magic was inside us all along. It's very clear that Joe Hill wrote this from beginning of time to the very end, right? He understood the entire history of it all. And that's a good writing lesson. If you want to become a writer, all you have to do is understand the world that you're in, understand the history that you're building to, and know how it's going to end first, and work towards that ending.
Right. I mean, it's Jim Butcher, the Dresden Files. Mm-hmm. He has flat out said that it's going to be a 21-book series. Mm-hmm. It's up to book 15.
Yeah.
And
it's nail biting. I can't wait for Peace Talks.
I can't either.
I'll believe it when I see it. It's in the Kingdom Hearts territory now.
Oh, you mean like how you don't believe Kingdom Hearts 3 will be a thing until it's on the shelf?
Precisely.
Okay. Final Fantasy VII remake, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. That's a very... Yes.
But it really is kind of that Dresden Files situation where Jim Butcher knows where he wants to go with every single book before he actually writes the book. He knows he's written it all out. Mm-hmm. He's got this entire plan going before he actually starts to write it. It's not that Stephen King discovery writing where you're discovering the ending as you're writing it.
Yeah.
They honestly already know how it's going to end, but we don't.
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep going on it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to reread it again, and I maybe we'll cover volume 2 fairly soon. Maybe it'll be our first one, because I think this is like the one where we're all very much like, yes, volume 2.
Let's do it.
So we may jump into that one sooner. That may be our first volume 2 that we do. I give it solid A. Like, this is fantastic reading, fantastic writing, fantastic artwork. There was, even with the beating over the head, I still enjoyed it. I felt like it was a great way of letting everyone know very clearly, like, hey, everyone else is aware that something else is up. They may not understand 100%, and reading later on in the series, understanding why they're so ambiguous about it all like, oh, that makes sense now, like, thinking back on it. So, solids A's are across the board. Would recommend, 10 out of 10, would do again.
And I actually cannot wait for the Netflix series.
Yes.
Because,
Ooh.
oh, yes. And, I mean, my wife loves American Horror Story, which I'll admit I've watched all of them. And I could see it actually being like the first season of American Horror Story, which I thought was extremely creepy, really dark, really used color and lighting well. But it's like when Sam flat out says, oh, it looks like a movie. I was like, yeah, this whole book, the artwork is really cinematic, and it could easily transition.
Very much so.
Very easy storyboards, pre-planned. Yeah, I can't wait. I don't think they have any other news other than it's in development. Yeah. So we don't have any castings or anything along those lines, unfortunately. So that kind of brings it to the end. Tell us what you think. What did you think of Locke and Key? Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? Is there a character you liked more, or you think that we should have highlighted differently? If you want to let us know, go to our Twitter @ComicTradesPod. We are more than happy to argue about it with you. As always, want to give a shout out to Kick Punch Cast. They have been super helpful, and we love chatting with them. They've been really nice.
They've been super supportive throughout this whole thing, and it's been refreshing.
It's nice to have a good community of podcasters behind you. So that's where you can find me. Where can they find you, Dane?
You can find me at Comic Nerd Dad on Twitter. And I did want to shout out to a couple of our listeners.
Cool.
The couple of listeners who actually wound up winning a couple of the comics.
Oh, yeah. How'd that go?
That would be Mason Radcliffe. And that would be Vader the Trader. Trader.
That's brilliant.
And those have been shipped, and I have been warned that, seeing as there have been some issues over in Hawaii, mail has been a little bit iffy, a little strange. And I do know that Mason, it lives in Canada, so it's going to be a bit, but they are on the way.
Cool.
And our next contest is going to be for a graphic novel this time. It's going to be for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 Cosmic Avengers.
Ooh, this will be exciting.
Which, if you have not read it, it's awesome. Brian Michael Bendis wrote it.
Bendis.
Again, he's one of those people that when he worked for Marvel, I was like, Bendis, read it. Bendis, read it. Now that he's on DC, I'm like, I don't know if I can read Superman, because I read the New Avengers Sentry storyline.
Which is their Superman in Marvel Comics.
I thought it was cool, but then after reflection, I'm like, no. Sentry is not a favorite of mine.
Too much of a good thing is a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, because the question that I asked earlier, what would you do if you were a billionaire and you wanted to get away from it all? Iron Man actually decides to build a suit to allow him to travel through space.
Oh, yeah, I remember this arc now that I think about it.
And winds up running into the Guardians and finds out he has to go back to Earth to help save Earth from the Badoon.
Not only that, but he finds out that he's dumber than Rocket Raccoon.
Yeah. Which is so awesome.
And sleeps with Gamora. And it's super awkward.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. Kaylin, do you have a social media you would like to plug?
If you want to get in contact with me, probably go through David. He can poke me after the fact. The Twitter I never use is
Gross.
at Neelith Rosethorn.
Great callback.
Poke you after the fact. Gross.
All right. So, with that being said, what are we reading next month?
That would be Batman Nightfall, one of my favorite Batman storylines. Bane, favorite Batman villain as a kid, because I was like, oh man, he's smart enough to figure out who Batman is from a prison in South America.
Yep. I cannot wait to talk about this one. This one's going to be a lot of fun.
And Chuck Dixon has always been my favorite Batman author.
Yeah.
Because he writes a gritty, dark Batman who actually deals with his emotions.
Yeah. And before we, like, a nice little teaser of what we'll talk about next month. If you want to tell us what you think about Batman Nightfall, follow us on Twitter, give us a shout out, tell us what you think. We will happily bring up your topics and your thoughts in our next month's episode. Until then, I'm David.
And I am Dane.
I'm Kaylin.
Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for having us aboard. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.